You're listening to the New Artist Workshop.
Take a base of action. Green food. Still across the whole sector of each other.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 27.
It's a trap.
Welcome back to your favorite podcast. Now that's what I call a franchise. I'm Peter Mancuso.
And I'm Viviana Metzger, and this is the show where Peter and I pick a film franchise and go through every single installment. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
And to be clear, we're defining a franchise as a series of films with at least 4 entries. So, Viviana, what are we talking about today?
Alright, so today we are talking about the 1983 film... I was going to make a joke and then
You were going to say Revenge of the Jedi, but you forgot it was called Revenge of the Jedi.
No, I was going to say, 1983 film, A New Hope. Just kidding. Return of the Jedi. Return of the
Jedi. Wait, hold on. I don't even understand the joke. Just, I'm going to say another Star Wars movie's name?
because you said it was like a remake of it.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Anyways, this is your one and only spoiler warning. If maybe if we didn't have a script and we could just be our authentic selves, then maybe there wouldn't be so many things.
Are you saying, you know what, give them your authentic self. Give them your authentic self.
Anyways, this is a spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, go do that before listening to this episode. And let us know which version you watch. Because apparently there are many.
Well, statistically speaking, it's just whatever is the version on Disney Plus. But as we've done for all the original films so far, I've been able to get my hands on the despecialized edition, which is like an HD version of the original theatrical versions, which of course have not received a proper physical release, a release of any kind since 2006 as a bonus feature on the DVD, which itself wasn't even a DVD quality copy. It was just a rip of the Laserdisc version from the 90s.
Anywho.
Why don't you read the letterbox blurb? Here's the blurb. I didn't know that word had 2 syllables.
Yeah, blurb. Luke Skywalker leads a mission to rescue his friend Han Solo from the clutches of Jabba the Hutt, while the Emperor seeks to destroy the rebellion once and for all with a second dreaded Death Star.
The first half of that makes it sound like rescuing Han is like most of the movie.
No.
Which would be kind of interesting if it was.
I mean, I guess so. I feel like we don't really see a lot of that, but...
No, we don't. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm saying it'd be interesting to see it, like, take up more of the movie.
Well, I guess anything with Jabba.
Like, the opening bit... Now we're starting to jump the gun a little. I don't want to jump the gun. But I was just going to say...
What are we jumping?
That the opening sequence at Jabba's... Like, all of the Jabba... Basically, everything until they leave Tatooine. Is arguably the best stuff of the movie.
Okay.
But at the same time, is completely incidental to the plot, except for the fact that Han Solo's now back.
Well, yeah, he's holding them hostage. You can't just walk in and grab someone.
No, but what I'm saying is it doesn't really have any bearing on the rest of the plot.
It's a MacGuffin.
That's a... No, it's not a MacGuffin.
It's not a MacGuffin.
But I'm just saying that it's not like it ties in. So, like, it's enjoyable. And then when you think about it narratively, it's like that was basically 30 minutes. And the narrative hasn't even really started.
Mm-hmm. Then what happened?
Like, what's the inciting incident of this movie?
When did we watch this?
Today's Saturday. We watched it last Tuesday.
I just feel like
you don't remember it?
I've had so much on my mind.
You don't remember?
No, I
movie?
do. I do.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Anyway, I don't want to jump the gun here. So do I hear some basic?
What is your inciting incident?
No, I don't know. I'm asking. Why are you asking me what my insight? I'm not a narrative.
I mean, what if I were to answer? What would you want me to say?
The answer is there is no answer.
Oh, there is none.
There is no inciting incident to the story.
There's no incident.
there are incidents. There's no exciting incident. Because it's basically just like the story is just going.
Well, yeah.
But that's why a lot of third movies fail, is because they struggle to both be the third final chapter of a larger story and be its own satisfying movie. Being its own satisfying movie doesn't mean you don't need to watch the other two, right? That's not what I'm saying. Sometimes people say, like, oh, can this sequel stand on its own? And I feel like that's dumb, because by nature of being a sequel, on some level, it cannot stand on its own. It's using characters and following a narrative through line.
I think the continuation is Han, and then the new, its own story thing is the second Death Star.
Yeah, but it feels kind of weak. Like nothing. Like they just go to a meeting and they're like, "This is happening."
Well, yeah.
But that's not how stories work.
Well, I'm not saying it was a good one.
My point is that this is why a lot of third movies and trilogies struggle, because it doesn't know. Because the first one has a beginning, middle, and end, because they usually don't know there's going to be more than one. The second one is able to have a strong inciting incident and usually either conclude its story or have some kind of cliffhanger. The third one always struggles
because it's the wrap up.
Because it's wrapping it up, but yet also needs to be its own movie, and oftentimes one is sacrificed for the other, or both, or both aren't satisfied, right?
Yeah.
So you think about something like Toy Story 3, which I feel is the weakest of the trilogy, but that one is successful in that it is its own beginning, middle, and end story.
Which one is that? Oh, when
Which one is that?
When
they go to daycare. When he Andy's older now.
Yes, and he gives it to the
right?
Yes.
In that one, there is its own, like, it's not that it stands alone.
Tortilla one.
Yes, the tortilla one. Ay, caramba, the tortilla. But it obviously doesn't stand on its own in the sense that you could just watch it without having seen the first two. But rather, the story is self-contained.
Yeah.
It draws, like, you could watch that on its own.
Yeah.
But obviously it's enhanced by having, like, been with these characters.
Yeah,
but there's a beginning, middle, and end to this story that is its own. Whereas this movie and a lot of third movies struggle to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So this one kind of feels like... It doesn't quite feel like the third act of a larger story, nor does it feel like its own story.
But
Avengers Endgame has the same problem.
I feel like that's just, like, Star Wars in general, though. Like, with the whole, like, crawl and everything. Because it's already... Stuff is already happening, and then you see something, and then more stuff happens. And
that's a good point, but the other two, like, just looking, like, not looking at any of the Star Wars films, just the past three.
Yeah.
Not counting the holiday special, of course.
Of course.
Those are there, but those are less... those aren't there to substitute first act setup. That's more just exposition. Like, each of those movies still has, like, there's a status quo, and everything's a certain way until, and then, like, it's Luke seeing the Princess Leia message.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, the second and third ones, more so.
Yeah. Well, even Empire Strikes Back, the Empire, they strike back. Right? Everything's all well and good. The status quo is they're hiding on this ice planet.
He's still looking for them, which he was doing in the first movie, so...
So this movie, I just feel like it's, like, hard to say, like, what... Like, in a sense, the very last scene of the... Really, Han being frozen in carbonite in the last movie is the inciting incident of this movie. And then the shift to Act 2, which is when the main character decides what they're going to do about the inciting incident. Right? That's really the last scene of Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is like, I'll meet you on Tatooine, we'll go rescue Han. So this movie is basically starts in Act 2 of its own story, and then concludes 30 minutes in. And then kind of remembers, and then about 30 minutes in, he goes to Yoda, it's like, oh wait, yeah, this is the third part of a larger story, but we're gonna just kind of skip, we're just kind of gonna pretend... Because we're already 30 minutes in, we're already going to pretend we're in Act 2 of a new story. So it's like, you have two stories in this movie, and the first story has its Act 1 in another movie.
Yeah.
And then the other story in this movie doesn't even have an Act 1. Let me do some basic info. I'm getting all ahead of
Things
myself.
happen.
This is one of those movies. I've talked about this before in other media. That if you follow my film review newsletter, cinemacuso.substack.com, I talk about there's a certain class of movie that are not bad movies. They're fine, but I get so annoyed about them because A, I see the potential, and or B, everyone else thinks it's amazing, and I'm like, look, I don't think it's awful, but it feels like the Emperor has no clothes. Like, there's all these problems with it. I feel that way about Frozen, Inside Out, right? Return of the Jedi is in this class,
Yeah.
right? So you're gonna hear me get very impassioned. It's not because I think this movie. I think it's a net positive movie, but I think it is so underwhelming, considering the potential that was set up in the last one, and considering how lauded it is, both at the time it came out and now. It just feels like it's not appropriate or deserving. That's how I feel.
I feel like I really liked it until like the end, and then it's kind of just like, okay, well,
define the end.
That's done.
Because again, the movie has such an amorphous structure.
Like
that's a debatable question. Like what do you mean by the end?
The wrap up of like, okay, what is Luke gonna do now? Like,
so like immediately following the climax,
he just looks like longingly into the distance and like,
well,
or like
we'll talk about
hey,
talk
we're
about
brother
this.
And sister. Cool. Okay. And
interesting. This movie ends with a celebration that really should have had some more context about like what now. Reminds me of another movie called Star Wars. I wonder if this movie is referencing that movie.
Oh, that's right.
Shamelessly and
that's
lazily.
Right. With the medal ceremony.
That sounds familiar.
So that's the only thing, because I was like,
well, we'll talk about, but
wait.
an original conception of the story would involve Luke. Like, it would still, the Empire would still be defeated, but it would kind of be more of like a, not tragic, but just like Luke would kind of go off into the sense that like, kind of like a Lone Ranger. Kind of like go off on his own.
Which
like,
I assume.
whereas this reinforces, like everyone,
school.
every one of our heroes survives unscathed.
Yeah.
And at the end, they're all just happy. They're just hugging, like, woohoo, we did it. Like, there's no kind of idea of, like, how any of this has transformed any of the characters.
Well,
in a character way, not just like, oh, obviously Luke is a skilled Jedi now, but, like, in a character sense.
I guess what I assume is that, like, Leia and Han, they're gonna explore more of their relationship, potentially obviously they get together, but then they get divorced, so obviously it didn't work. Anyways, so, like, explore that.
There's two alternate timelines. There's the old canon, and then there's a new canon, but in both, they both have a son named Ben.
There's different...
Remember I told you the old...
I know, but there's a different... They don't get divorced in one of them?
I don't think in the old canon they got divorced.
Okay.
I don't think.
Anyways, so they would explore their relationship, and then...
And explore each other's bodies,
and then Luke would, like, I guess, create a school?
Like a new Jedi, which also happens in both canons. Yeah. To varying degrees of success, depending on which canon you're
there's
at.
no indication of that. Like, there's...
It's such a wimpy, just kind of like a...
shot of his hand, and, like, okay, he's gotten over the, like, the war of man versus machine, so he's, still more man than his father was. But then there's, like, you can only assume about what he's gonna do next, So it's like, okay.
It leaves a lot to the imagination, but not in a good way.
Goodbye.
Yub nub. It's yub hashtag yub nub. Okay, let's put a pin in this. Let's do some basic info here. I'm sorry, this is one of the, like I said, this is one of those movies. We haven't even gotten to the basic info, and I'm already like throwing out hot takes about this. I gotta scale it back. So it was directed by Richard Marquand or Cand, I don't know how to pronounce his name, who was a TV director. So this is his first feature film, like, for theaters.
Oh, good job, Richard.
No, not good job.
Oh, well, a Star Wars as your first one.
I guess so. Well, we'll talk about why. Well, I think we talked about it last time, but I'll just say it now, and then I'll say it again later. Because of Lucas's beef with the Directors Guild, he couldn't basically hire anyone that he wanted. And then everyone else that he wanted, like on a B list, declined. So people like, this is going to be a strange list. David Lynch, who declined to do this and went on to make his Dune movie instead.
Oh, he made the Dune movie?
He made in the 80s. David Cronenberg, who's like an influential... I don't think I've ever seen any of his movies. He's an influential like body horror director. He did like The Dead Zone and Scanners, I think, and he turned it down. The top choice was Spielberg.
Yeah.
Especially after Raiders of the Lost Ark.
But there was some problem.
The union.
Yeah.
Because Spielberg was still part of the union. And wanted to be in the directors union, the directors guild. So he didn't want to like piss them off by doing this. Basically, they were like, George Lucas, you're in trouble, right? We talked about it, because basically they didn't put the credits at the front, which was a requirement.
Yes, I remember that. So he's
It may have changed by now, because I feel like I see a bunch of movies that don't
in the
have.
guild, or he didn't.
Lucas left
want
that
to be
the
in
guild. Lucas left all the unions.
Oh, he just left it.
Because he was like, fuck you guys. He's George Lucas. So that it was written by Lawrence Kasdan, who did Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and returning to the writer's chair, if you will, George Lucas, right? So he wrote THX 1138, which was his first film, which is very esoteric and dull.
Which it does not have a good name at all.
No,
Because it's like, how are people gonna remember that?
yeah,
You know? I mean, I think I can remember it now, looking
because I've seen it a million times.
Because it says thanks in text.
THX, yeah.
But back in the 70s or 80s, oh, what are you gonna go see this weekend? Oh, Dune. What are you gonna see? T.
Yeah. T something.
11 something.
I don't know.
So
It's like someone's phone number.
yeah, so it's not very good.
Yeah.
It's not catchy like Jenny's phone number.
Yeah.
8675309.
309. See, the fact we still know that 800-588-2300 Empire today, right?
Exactly. So this is not that.
Yeah. But anyway, so if any of our listeners, have you ever watched THX 1138? It's a very experiment. Look, we've talked about this before. Lucas, no, it's basically a dystopian future where people are like the title is the main character's name. People have been reduced to just like things like that, and like they're sexless, like they're all
like
bald
Giver.
and have no hair. It's kind of like that. They're like sexless and like they reproduce because like then they just like they pull like the sperm out and egg out of people. Like there's no like naturally conceived humans
you've seen
anymore.
this?
I watched it, recently. And it was very disappointed by it, actually. I thought it was okay. Lucas, and we've talked about this before, Lucas has always been more formal. I don't mean formal as in polite or proper, but I'm talking about in an artistic sense. Like, he's much more interested in cinema as a medium rather than a conduit for characters and dialogue. So he's always been more about the image. He's always been more interested in the visuals, editing especially, because that's the one thing that makes film different than every other medium, right? Because even the visual part, like, it's the same kind of principles as photography. Editing is the one thing that's unique. That's what makes film, right? So you see that in THX 1138. It's like, it's more about like the ideas. He's a big idea guy, and like it's interesting the way he's like conceptualized it and visualized it, but it's not super engaging on an emotional level. American Graffiti, similar, but has a great script written by George Lucas, as well as Gloria Katz and Willard Huyck, like we talked about, right? And from my understanding, he wrote a draft and then gave it to them to punch up. And I would suspect everything that's really great about that script in terms of like the character interactions is really from them. He's obviously setting the big picture. He's setting the table, but they're the ones actually kind of making it work moment to moment.
Modesto. The armpit of California.
The armpit of California. It looks pretty cool in American Graffiti.
That's what people say.
And then, of course, he's the sole credited writer on the original Star Wars. But as we talked about,
Lies.
Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz did uncredited script rewrites on it.
No, they should be in the union.
Right? I mean, they might be in the union. I don't know.
Well, they didn't get their props.
It might have to do with how much material gets changed or something.
Oh, we talked about this with the
It has to
dead
be like
lady.
it has to be like a certain percentage.
Yes.
But anyway,
The dead lady still works.
so my point being is that this is going to be a recurring thing as we see doing the rest of this franchise, is the more George Lucas is involved in writing the script, the worse it's going to be. Right?
Isn't that like what the prequels are known for?
Well, that's the thing. Is and again, not to put too much at the start here, because we literally only made it 2 points into the basic info. But I want to say, people complain about the prequels, rightfully so, because the dialogue is just atrocious. It's so clunky. It feels like human beings don't talk like this. It's hard to connect to any of the characters. It doesn't help that Lucas has directed his actors to be as like stoic and robotic as possible, because these are like great actors.
Yeah.
Right? But I imagine they would do a take and George Lucas would be like, do it a little bit less. Do a little, you know what I mean? But one of my many hot takes is that all of the problems with the prequels writing, you see it start here. If you read original drafts of the first Star Wars, it reads like one of the prequels. Esoteric, wordy, robotic. It almost works better if it was just a novel, because you don't have to hear any of the shit out loud. Like, hearing an actual human being say it just feels false. Even to people who don't know anything about writing or acting, it just feels wrong.
Yeah, well, because it's more of a set dressing, like we talked about. He's more focused on
Exactly.
the operatic part of it. So.
But like the macro kind of ideas,
Yeah.
he's not great with those moment-to-moment interactions.
Yeah.
But so my kind of thesis here, and I have a few, but I think they all stem from this, is I think all the problems you see with the prequels, at least in terms of the writing, you see shadows or kind of what do you call it? Not predictions, but like foreshadowing. You see the foreshadowing here. You see some of the clunkiness, some of the stoicness in a bad way. This kind of unnatural kind of thing, and then it's infused with like a Lawrence Kasdan kind of screwball comedy, and they're put like side by side, and they do not mesh. So like you'll have some of the stuff in the Jabba Palace that, and some of this is admittedly funny. So you have like this banter with all the main characters going back and forth, like you know. When Luke and Han first reunite and they're both like getting all tied up.
Oh, yes.
And he's like, "Oh, it's great to like, how are we doing?" And Luke's like, "Same as usual." Han's like, "That bad, huh?"
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of funny. And then like 20 minutes later, you get like really clunky, awful dialogue between Luke and Obi-Wan that feels like it's from the prequels. Like, and they just don't go together. It's bad enough that you have the clunky dialogue, but then you have this added problem of this weird.
The person, no? I feel like it depends. Like,
no, you have characters talking in different ways depending on the scene and who.
Yeah, who they're talking to.
No, I'm saying like, just.
In general.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe who they're talking to, but it just feels like disconnected. There's a difference
But you see
between.
what I'm saying? Like with
Yes.
Han and then like Obi, who's like your mentor or whatever. Like.
Yes, but it doesn't feel like, oh, the characters are choosing to speak, like they're code switching. I think it's just like two different writers were writing this and they don't have, and it's in the oops, sorry.
They're writer switching.
It feels like you feel the writer's hand in a bad way, right? As opposed to this being like a living person that exists and is going to say things in a way that is organic to who they are as a character.
Yeah.
It feels like the writer is writing them to say this.
Which is
they are a
always
puppet for me, the writer, to put
it-
my thought into them.
You know, that is like I don't even know what you would call it. That is like, not the creme de la creme, but it's like the ultimate thing that is like difficult to get, you know. Like
Good writing, you mean? Just like making it sound like...
dialogue.
Dialogue
Like
is the
human
hardest...
dialogue. Because, you know, you can write it and then, you know, read it and okay, but then like act it out. It's like, oh, well, they wouldn't really respond that way, or what the hell are they saying? Like, why are they saying that? You know, so it's like,
Yeah. Aaron Sorkin had a... Because on YouTube,
difficult.
I always... Because they know I'm the target demographic, I always see... Not as much anymore, but especially like a couple years ago, I would always see the ads for Masterclass, which I did a few of them, and they're actually really good, depending on who it is.
I heard they
the
were,
the
yeah.
Scorsese one and the Ken Burns one were great, and I did a Bob Iger one, and it was very disappointing. It was very flat.
What would he teach you?
Talking about like business and like creative leadership and stuff, and it was really just like boilerplate kind of stuff. But anyway, so but I always see the ads, and Aaron Sorkin would always be one, and he's a very famous writer who did like The West Wing, The Social Network. The writer, not direct. He's not a director.
Yeah.
Though he has directed a few things. He did the Trial of Chicago 7 that you watched, right? He wrote and directed that. That's a more recent thing he did. But in his
that's tough.
ad would start off, "Damn it, how could this have happened?" And then he's like, "First rule in writing: no one ever says damn it." like things that maybe make sense when you're writing it.
Yeah.
Like no one in a real situation has ever gone, "Damn it, how could this have happened?"
Yeah.
Like
It seems natural in your brain, but like when you see it in real life, it's like, wait, that's off. That's wrong. You know.
This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. This is why mediums are important, because I think you could get away with that when you're writing a book.
Yeah.
And not because you're cheating somehow or a book is lesser. It's just like, because the book isn't meant to, it's supposed to elicit some kind of, it activates different parts of your brain.
Yeah, you can
right?
be more imaginative.
You can imagine the perfect way to say it. And not like you're literally hearing it, it's just like your mind fills in the blanks.
Yeah.
Right? And
I feel
ultimately,
like they're also like story people. They're not like people.
And that's why, they're ultimately not living, breathing people, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I always get not annoyed, I should say, but I've always disliked, like, people, aspiring screenwriters, like, oh, I bought a copy of Pulp Fiction, the screenplay, and I read it. Mm-hmm. That's so fucking stupid. Because a screenplay is not meant to be literary. Mm-hmm. It is, and that's why I also don't like how we read stage plays in English classes in high schools.
People do that a lot. When I was in college, people would read plays all the time.
Because plays you can get away with a little bit more,
like,
because it's very
so
dialogue
boring.
based. But with a screenplay, it exists in the literary medium, yet is not really taking advantage of the literary medium. It exists as a blueprint.
It's really guiding the
It'd be like just looking at a blueprint for a house and being like, this is just as good as the house.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like it exists in this medium of a drawing, but only as a blueprint to build it in 3 dimensions. So with a screenplay, I don't even know how we got on this tangent. With a screenplay, it's the same idea. Right? So I think that's why you often, I know how we got here, right? So that's how you can have inexperienced screenwriters write dialogue that sounds really weird, because when they're writing it, it feels natural for the literary medium.
Yeah.
But they obviously know it consciously, but like they forget that this is not literary. It's going to be said aloud.
But then you know what? By the time it gets there, unless you have some crazy situations like Apocalypse Now or whatever, then it's like, well shit, it's kind of too late. Like, that's
it's hard to,
it's in the next stage, so these people need to memorize the script.
Exactly.
You can't just keep changing it, you know, because it doesn't sound right.
Exactly.
So it's like, well shit, at that point you're kind of fucked. So
all of this to say, to coming back to
it's a toughie.
Writing dialogue is really, this is what you were saying. The reason why we started on this is that, like, writing good dialogue is so impressive.
Yeah. Because
bad dialogue is just like, it's so easy to write bad dialogue.
Yeah.
And it can tank the whole thing. Because people think of, a script just means the dialogue. There's a lot of things that make a script, like story and structure and character growth and development. But the dialogue is the most on its face thing the audience will get. And the dialogue informs all those other things. Yeah. Because it's the way the story is actually being manifested. So audiences, even those who know nothing about screenwriting, can just feel when dialogue sounds inauthentic, wooden, or you know what I mean?
So I feel like if you go to just write it, then it's like a point A to point B, but that's not how people are. Because there's like mixtures of emotion, there's like a coming to the realization or whatever. So, you know, someone's not just gonna, what did he say? Damn it.
Damn it, how could this have happened?
Like, damn it, how could this have happened? And be like, you know, you might be like, oh,
fuck.
how did this happen? Jesus.
Exactly.
Like, you know, so it's like, it's a little weird to write those things, right? Like, sigh after sigh, or like, you know, puzzled look.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, very.
That's why it's really important to
interesting.
get a good actor and a good director
Yeah.
who can take the blueprint,
Yeah.
which is all it is, and people try to elevate it like, oh, I bought Tarantino's annotated script. Like, I don't give a shit.
Well, if you bought it, then you're a fool, because you can find it online for free.
Well, whatever it is, they read
But-
it. Well, because they'll buy like a nice version. That's like
Oh,
a
yeah,
published version that has like
Yeah.
maybe an occasional picture of like a behind the scenes still or something.
Yeah.
Or, let me continue. So it was
Anyway.
produced by Howard Kazanjian, not Gary Kurtz this time, because he was basically not fired, but it was kind of like a mutual firing resignation.
He said, I got things.
So Howard, he was an uncredited producer on Empire Strikes Back, and he was the executive producer on Raiders.
What is with all this uncredited work business?
I don't know.
I would be furious.
It was distributed by 20th Century Fox per usual. It was released in May of 1983. It was made for $38 million and grossed $482 million at the box office.
Good job.
So pretty good. But notably, let me pull this up and compare. Notably, it was the lowest of the trilogy. And the most expensive film of the trilogy. So still a profit.
There
A
were
good profit.
A lot of aliens.
There were a lot of creatures.
And also effects, too. So
Well, don't get me started on
so that says it right there, I think. Or at least in my mind, in terms of creating things. Right. As opposed to a reused rat. You know, you make an entirely new species.
yeah, like in the
Then-
holiday special that you got a big rat.
Yeah, so, you know, if you're making an entirely
Yeah.
new species, then that's a lot of silicone and then plaster and all that shit that you gotta do to...
Because the
make it.
first one didn't really, it was very human centric except for the stuff at the cantina. It was like almost just like, it was like oversaturated in the first movie.
Lots of humans, and then really just
When they go to the bar.
C-3PO and R2.
But they're more droids, right? But when we go to the bar, the
Well,
cantina.
those are things you gotta build.
No, I know, I'm just saying in terms of creatures. Like everyone's seen a robot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Obviously, there are new designs for robots, but like the creatures is really where they get kind of interesting. And then the last one we watched is also very human, but they have Yoda
Yeah.
and a few bounty hunters that are like weird aliens.
Oh, yes, yes.
Like it's weird when they go to Cloud City. Like in future Star Wars stuff, it's like there's a bunch of always just like creatures. Like it's very diverse.
Yeah.
Whereas in Cloud City, it's just all humans.
All people, yeah.
It's just all people.
I did notice.
Right? Which I'm fine with. I don't mind, but it's weird then seeing what they do later because it just becomes easier to put more aliens into places.
Yeah.
This one has way more creatures and they're more evenly spread out.
Yeah.
Because you have all the stuff with Jabba and all of the people.
Jabba.
And then even though they're all basically variations of the same thing, then you have all the Ewoks.
Yes, you have all the... Yes, they're all different kinds. If you see, like, even if they're the same color, they each have, like, a different pattern or whatever.
They're like snowflakes.
Or
No
like-
two Ewoks are the same.
Or, like, different hairstyles. And then there's all the fish people. Lieutenant Beck!
He's not in this movie.
Oh.
He was created for the Star Wars Rise of the Resistance
He's
ride.
the guy they're talking to.
No, that's Admiral Akbar!
Oh,
Beck is like purple.
anyways.
Akbar is like orangey.
Fish people. He's got the fish people.
From the planet Mon Calamari.
Yes.
Which is, now I just want calamari. I'm really hungry. I haven't really eaten anything today.
Oh my goodness. And then they have all this stuff in the cantina again, and we get a lot of close-ups too.
In this one, well, it's not really canteen. It's like his like harem almost.
Or yeah, whatever.
His palace. They call it Jabba's palace.
The club.
Club Jabba.
And the thing is that it's not a lot of like far away things, right? So like the bantha with like it just being a dressed up elephant. It's like in your face, right? The little tube nose lady who's singing and stuff like that. Like
the big kind of blue elephant guy who's like jamming. He's like,
who looks completely out of place. He looks like he's been
he looks like a PBS like a PBS puppet educational show.
It's like all these like aliens, and then there's just like
and then of course
like heffalump.
And then of course the most iconic creature in all of Star Wars, your spirit animal, Salacious Crumb.
Salacious Crumb, which is so weird that he's a well, I guess not because of just the way that
essentially just a really high budget sock puppet.
But
because it's just a hand, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's just funny how like he's like a guy because he's like there's like a few shots of him, you know.
I would love to read.
I guess everything in Star Wars has a name and a backstory, so. You know.
Or at the very least, it didn't when it was made, but then people, especially between this movie and then Episode 1 in 1999, there wasn't a lot of there was no Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And very rarely was there Star Wars even TV stuff.
No, we see why.
Yeah. So, basically that 16-year period is when you have all of these writers who are obsessed with Star Wars and don't have a lot of material to work with. Then they start basically being like, well, that guy in the background, I'm going to write a whole... There was a whole book, I forget what it was called, and this was the old canon, of course, that was basically an anthology book, and every chapter was like a little mini story about each creature you see in the cantina in the first movie. And, like, their backstory and, like, what led them to be at the cantina on that day.
Creature? Oh, my gosh.
Right? So there's, like, 20, 30 chapters or something.
Yeah.
Each one gets their own little mini story.
That's wild.
Right? So to your point, like, they all have names, but that's kind of almost, like, post-dated. Like, I'm sure when they made it, they were... Some of them may have had names, so some of them were probably just, like, Big Blue Guy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe by this point they were getting names. But in the first movie, it was definitely just, like, there's a wolf man... Yeah. There's a there's a weird like praying mantis creature.
Why do the fish people have to be from wherever?
Mon Calamari.
Mon Calamari. Like
that's funny.
Do they really need a planet name? We never go to the fish planet.
At least in this movie.
You know. In
the Clone Wars, we do though.
Oh, you do?
And I think both the 2D and the 3D shows.
Oh. I've never seen that one.
But we watched the 2D one, but not.
And we
haven't watched the 3D ones.
I don't remember.
That's like an actual show, whereas the 2D one's basically just a micro series.
I don't remember going to a fish planet though. I just remember inside the arena. Where it's like kind of...
They go. There's a part where they go to like, an ocean. They land one of the big star cruisers like on the water.
Oh, and it's underwater.
Yeah, and he's using his lightsaber underwater. Kit Fisto, the green one with all the.
Yes. Okay.
Anyway, we are long into this one, and we're about. So, what's your previous experience with this movie? Of course, you and I have watched this.
Yeah.
But do you remember this one? Now that we're talking about all three of them, is there one of the three in this original trilogy that you remember watching more over the others? Or not at all? Or maybe which one stuck out with you? Because this one is the most kiddie, I feel like, because of the Ewoks. Yeah, at the same time is also the darkest with all the Emperor stuff. Mm-hmm. Again, it's like he's slamming these two things together that don't necessarily... go together well. I'm not gonna say they don't go together, but requires
obviously do. Someone put them together.
Someone did it. You crazy son of a bitch! You did it.
I'm not entirely sure, but I know like the three pieces, but I guess I didn't remember them all in one movie, right? So, Jabba, Ewoks, and
like the Emperor, Darth Vader, Luke.
No. Oh, what was the other one? I totally just blanked out. Wow.
What do you mean? Stuff with what? I mean, that's basically there's.
In the chase and the forest. Chase.
Oh, the chase of the forest.
So I remember all three of those. I didn't remember they were all in the same movie.
The things that stuck out the most was like the macro visual. Like again, that's the stuff that sticks with you.
Yeah, definitely. And.
You know what this movie is like? It's like broccoli.
This movie?
Yeah, because it's like the immediate experience is annoying, but it's good nutrition. Like all of these pieces.
I enjoy broccoli.
All of these pieces work better in memory.
Yeah.
But then, like, at least for me, when I'm watching it, I'm just annoyed because like the minute-to-minute execution, I find frustrating, frustratingly mediocre, frustratingly, not meeting expectations or meeting potential.
You know,
But then when I think about it, I'm like, maybe this movie's better than I remember it being. Like, because I'm like, all these pieces are really cool and interesting.
Yeah.
And then I watch it, I'm like, oh, I remember why this movie annoys me.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I wasn't so much...
You really liked it. I'm being the Debbie Downer, so feel free to disagree with it.
I wasn't as annoyed as you were, but I feel like that is a thing with me, is that I remember the visuals, and I don't know if that's like a human instinct type thing, but, you know, so... Okay, so we have Jabba, right? Big, scary slug worm guy with a disgusting tongue. And then we've got the cute little Ewoks. And then we've got the super cool fast chase in the redwoods, which they shouldn't be going that fast because they're in a fucking forest.
That's why I don't understand. Why would you, if you're the Empire, that's a great vehicle for Hoth.
Yeah.
The snow planet. You have these big, wide open areas.
And then speaking of Hoth, and then, you know, I forgot what it's called. The dead thing, right? And Han using the dead thing.
The dead thing. Oh, the Tauntaun.
Tauntaun, yes. Using the dead Tauntaun, right? So, and then what else?
I'm just saying, why would you, if you're the Empire, why would you employ this vehicle type? Like, that feels like it's George Lucas going, this will be a good toy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like within the rules of the universe, that seems really dumb. Like, that does not seem like it is well suited to that environment.
But you know what? I think if there was a clearing or something, it probably wouldn't be as memorable. But the fact that we're like, what? You know, we remember.
Well, here's the thing. You know what we can compare it to? The asteroid chase in the last movie.
Ugh, yes.
Because what that makes that...
Why would you do that?
So what makes that work, though, is that you're using ships or vehicles that should not be in this environment. Yeah. They go there on purpose to try to escape.
Yeah.
Right? In this movie, the Empire brought these vehicles to Endor.
I don't know.
So that's what I'm saying. That's the good difference, where you're like, yeah, it wouldn't be as exciting, but... then you just shouldn't do it at all.
Well, I mean, they can use them. It's just you shouldn't be going that fast, or else you're gonna run into a tree, and that happened many times.
He watched Ben-Hur.
It happened many times.
He watched Ben-Hur and liked the chariot race, and then he really gets to do it for real in episode 1 with the pod race.
Yeah.
Which, if you watch the Ben-Hur chariot race,
that one too, yeah.
But that one at least makes more sense because it's a arbitrary, like, they are doing it.
Really, the only thing I think that I remember from that movie. There's probably more, but you know,
because it's arguably the best part of the movie.
That part, and then
on every level, the editing, the sound design, the sound design.
Yes, we talked about it in one of the past ones, and then in the third one, of course, the Padawans, because it's just like
they get slaughtered. Spoilers. Sorry.
Just like shot through the heart, right? And then like the lava planet. So there's all these like
Star Wars is very imagery
big
based
things that I can remember. Not so much like the minute to minute.
Star Wars is very iconic, and of course, obviously, it's iconic in the way we mean iconic, but I mean it is like of icons. Like it is, is strung together by these incredibly memorable moments. Yeah. Or images. Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I mean, even. You remembered in the first shot, like you said it was similar to the first shot of the first movie.
Well, yeah, the Death Star,
the giant ship going over, and then there's like the Death Star in the back. So like even more familiar things.
It's like referencing itself now.
It's like still iconic.
Yeah, but yeah, my previous experience I've seen a million times. So let's talk about the background.
Were you always annoyed with it, or did you?
No. Well, as a kid,
just got annoyed.
When I was a kid, I loved them all equally. Mm-hmm. Or rather, I should say, Revenge of the Sith was at the top, and then everything else was tied for second place. As most children,
why do you like that one so much?
As a kid, I don't know, something about the operatic and stuff.
Like out of all of them,
Maybe we should save that for then. But I guess my guess would be it's a host of factors. Number one, because it is the most operatic of any of them.
Like it
prequel or
made
integral.
You want to make movies? Like that's why.
It's easily. Well, I mean.
Yeah,
it's the most kind of narratively kind of, I keep using it, this operatic kind of tragic hero's journey. Like it feels like maximalist cinema in every sense of the word, right? So that makes sense why that one would hit with me. Like I don't think there was really no other film I'd ever seen that was like that.
Yeah.
I was 8 when it
Also
came out.
impressionable.
It was the first one that came out when I was like semi-conscious and saw it in theaters. And the marketing, merchandising surrounding it was everywhere.
Yeah.
Not as much as the Phantom Menace, because that was huge. Like Star Wars is coming back, blah, blah, blah. But I was only 2.5, I don't remember. And then Attack of the Clones, it was 2002. I was only 5.
Yeah.
So I don't remember that coming out either. So it's a host of factors, both intrinsic to the movie, but then also like it's just my Star Wars. It's the Star Wars like that this was mine. People way older than me had the originals. People slightly older than me had the other 2 movies. People younger than me now that have the sequel. This was my Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
That's probably a bigger part than I'm probably making it out to be.
Movie!
I'd like to think there's something about it as a movie.
Yeah.
But if we know anything about psychology, it's probably just the latter. It's probably
there are
just
like nostalgia and stuff.
nostalgia is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
It is my favorite Star Wars movie and also one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
That's what I'm saying, is that you think it's the worst movie ever, but also the best movie.
There's way too much. There's so much to unpack with Return of the Jedi. We're not gonna open up this can of worms.
Anyways, let's get back to returning of Jedi.
Let's these Jedi gotta start returning. The Sith need to wait to have revenge. The Jedi need to return first. So let's talk about the development. So following discussions between Star Wars creator George Lucas and producer Howard Kazanjian, a sequel to Empire Strikes Back was swiftly put into production. As with the previous film, Lucas personally financed Return of the Jedi. Because he successfully survived the last gamble.
Yes.
Where he was like, I'm basically putting everything I made on the first one into this one.
Yeah.
And I could literally like lose everything if this movie doesn't do well. Which is not a sure thing.
I guess so.
Because it's like, can lightning strike twice?
But
Right?
he became a millionaire overnight, right? He wouldn't lose everything.
No, but then he put money into it and then got some loans and used like the rights or something as like collateral essentially. So like, right? He like put up a lot of stuff as collateral that like if he had lost that, then right. Lucas also chose not to direct Return of the Jedi himself and started searching for a director. Irvin Kershner, who previously directed The Empire Strikes Back, declined to direct the film after spending 2 years working on the previous film. Although Lucas's first choice was Steven Spielberg, like we talked about, their separate feuds with the Directors Guild led to his being banned from directing the film. Yikes. Lucas approached David Lynch, who had recently been nominated for the Academy Award for Best Director for The Elephant Man in 1980, to helm Return of the Jedi, but Lynch declined, saying that he had, quote, next door to zero interest.
Next door to zero interest.
End quote. And if you hear the story, I think I put this in my trivia, but there's like an event he was at, and he tells the story about him going to Skywalker Ranch to meet with Lucas about it, and he just said, like, in a pure coincidence, I woke up with an awful migraine. So he showed me around, and he's showing me R2, like the R2D2.
Yeah.
And I just like feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Maybe.
And George brings me into his Ferrari, and we're driving around the ranch at 90 miles an hour, and I have this massive migraine.
Take some Advil. But maybe it's not hard to write good dialogue, because people say out-of-pocket things like next door to zero interest.
But that's in line with his character.
But
it doesn't feel
his
like
character of himself.
David Lynch is and if you can believe it, it's a Friday once again.
He added a word. It's next to nothing.
Anyway, Lucas also offered David Cronenberg the chance to direct, but he declined the offer as he did not want to work on other people's material and only did films that he wrote. Lucas eventually chose Richard Marquand, when you have no other options, you go to a random British TV director. Lucas may have directed some of the second unit work personally, as the shooting threatened to go over schedule. This is a function Lucas had willingly performed on previous occasions when he had only officially been producing a film. For example, More American Graffiti, which was like a sequel that he did not write or direct.
Oh, there's a sequel?
There is a sequel. I've not
There's more graffiti!
Everyone agrees is just like mediocre. And then Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, for those of you who don't know, second unit is basically like you have a crew, and then you have an additional crew that will at the same time be filming other stuff that's like less important. So like if you have a shot of like with no actors in it of something exploding, you might have a second unit film that. Like you don't need the director and the primary cinematographer and the primary assistant director. Like you don't need all of them and pay them to do it when you could just hire a cheaper crew to film that stuff.
Yeah, exterior, B-roll, all that.
Precisely. So Lucas definitely did second unit work, though some reports say that he basically, kind of micromanaged it, because again, Richard Marquand did not have a lot of experience directing any feature film, let alone a Star Wars movie with all these moving parts and VFX and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Lucas did operate the B camera on the set a few times. Lucas himself has admitted to being on the set frequently because of Marquand's relative inexperience with special effects. Lucas praised Marquand as a, quote, very nice person who works well with the actors, end quote. Marquand did know that Lucas kept a conspicuous presence on set, joking, quote, it is rather like trying to direct King Lear with Shakespeare in the next room. End quote. Right? So it's like, so anytime, like, if there was ever going to be a tension over, like, oh, Lucas wants it one way, Marquand wants another way, Lucas, it was always going to be Lucas's way.
Yeah.
That Marquand was a director in, like, the golden age of Hollywood sense of, like, almost just like a floor manager at a factory. His job is just to get the job done, essentially. Yeah. And I think it shows because I think it's the weakest visually of the three films. Except for the VFX stuff, but again, that's almost like a C unit because, like, really the VFX team are really directing those shots. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The screenplay was written by Lawrence Kasdan and Lucas with uncredited contributions by David Peoples and Marquand, based on Lucas's story. Kasdan claims he told Lucas that Return of the Jedi was a, quote, weak title, end quote. Kazanjian said the same, and the title was changed to Revenge of the Jedi 1 or 2 days later. So it's weird that this movie started, it said Return of the Jedi. Did we watch like a weird B version of it?
Jedis don't revenge.
The screenplay itself was not finished until rather late in pre-production, well after a production schedule and budget had been created by Kazanjian and Marquand had been hired, which was unusual for a film. Because usually you use the script to figure out your schedule. Like, okay, it's this many pages, this thing. So they were kind of just trying to figure out, like, okay, there's going to be this kind of scene.
That's what I'm saying, is like, you have to have it done beforehand or else you'll, like, fuck up the whole thing.
That's what I'm saying.
But also it's...
little changes here and there.
But also it's difficult to have the whole thing,
Interesting. It sounds like the script took a long time and it kind of... It's always great when scripts take a really long time to figure out. It always works out well. Instead, the production team relied on Lucas's story and rough draft in order to commence work with the art department. When it came time to formally write a shooting script, Lucas, Kasdan, Marquand, and Kazanjian spent 2 weeks in conference discussing ideas. Kasdan used taped transcripts of these meetings to then construct the script. The question of whether Ford would return for the final film arose during pre-production, because they kind of set it up like they could kill him off and Harrison Ford just never returns.
Yeah.
Unlike Hamill and...
He did not have nose holes, notably. Unlike Hamill and Fisher, Ford had not contracted to do 2 sequels, and Raiders of the Lost Ark had made him an even bigger star. Kazanjian said that Han was frozen in carbonite in Empire because the filmmakers were unsure whether the character would return. He also claimed that Lucas did not expect Ford to return, and that Han was initially not in the script. However, Kazanjian, who also produced Raiders of the Lost Ark, convinced Ford to return. Ford felt that Han should die through self-sacrifice in the third film. Kasdan agreed and said it should occur near the beginning of the third act to make the audience wonder whether the other protagonists will survive. I kind of agree with this. Because it's kind of weird because Han really doesn't have anything to do in this movie. He's kind of just there. How would he do that? What would he be sacrificing for?
Maybe like a Jabba's palace or something. Gary Kurtz, who produced Star Wars and Empire but was replaced by Kazanjian for Jedi, said that Han died in an earlier version of the script. Kurtz has suggested that one reason Lucas may have rejected the idea of Han dying was that it would not be good for merchandising. Because again, George Lucas is... Again, that's most of where his money was coming from at this point. It was not the movie ticket sales, but all the merchandising rights, which of course he had full control of because 20th Century Fox, when he made the first one, was just kind of like, we don't care about this because it wasn't really important back then for movies. Kurtz also claimed that an early script has Luke walking off alone like a hero, quote, in a spaghetti western, end quote. Right? So kind of like that Clint Eastwood, good, bad, the ugly kind of vibe, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a recurring theme here, is that this film feels very much like they figured out what is going to be good for merchandising first. Mm-hmm. And then... So, like, people derided the Ewoks
Like deride?
Deride, like it feels like a lot of people at the time complained. There was a whole joke on How I Met Your Mother. Like, you can figure out if at least for that generation of those characters on How I Met Your Mother, the idea was if a girl you're dating likes the Ewok, she's too young for you. Because if you were like maybe like a preteen or teen, you thought it was like, oh, they're like, it's so kiddie and dumb and blah blah blah. So that was like their metric, was like if she thinks you would be too young for them, exactly, for these characters, for Neil Patrick Harris's character.
So he's little, he's small.
So but
he's
the idea, no one's saying they're not cute. The idea is the issue rather is that the issue is that the merchant, it's like the tail is wagging the dog. That theoretically you should just strive to make the best movie possible and then figure out the merchandising from there.
Okay.
Whereas in this they almost reverse engineered it, like, let's find a way to include cute little bear characters because people love teddy bears. So if we can make Star Wars teddy bears, that would be huge.
Well, it's they've got their story and they just so happen to be on the bear planet.
Well, I believe in an original version they were going to be the Wookiees.
Oh.
But those aren't as cuddly and merchandisable.
And
also that'd be really expensive too.
That'd just be a lot of fur.
Right? And I'll talk about that in just a second, but I have another point here.
We've seen how that goes. A world of Wookiees.
A world of Wookiees. Yeah, but it turns out pretty cool in the... Anytime we ever get Kashyyyk, or Kazook... Yeah.
Different. They are in the prequel, right?
They're in the third one.
Yeah, and they're like.
They've also been in video games, in comics, in books. Anytime we ever get Kashyyyk and other stuff, it's great. So let's not deride Kashyyyk or Kazook. The way I think of Kazook and Kashyyyk, the name difference, is how there's a term for it, like exonym and endonym. Basically, like we call Germany Germany, but Germans don't call it Germany; they call it Deutschland.
Yes.
Right. Like, countries have their own names for their countries.
Yes, isn't that weird?
And it's not just a translation thing, because Deutschland doesn't translate to Germany. Deutschland translates to fatherland. Father country.
But you would think that we would call it what they call themselves, right? Why would we?
Well, it's like we call it Mars, but if we ever found Martians, they wouldn't call, oh yeah, we're Martians.
Yeah, but
that's like the idea.
But we know now, right? Like, yeah.
It just stuck. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe Kazook and Kashyyyk. I know the real non-diegetic reason why there's two names. Because they just named it and then they changed it later. But that's my in-universe explanation. That's my headcanon.
If they already did it, why would they rename it? I
don't know, because Kazook sounds like kazoo. Because they wanted to distance... The fact they even kept Kashyyyk, the Wookiee planet, after the holiday special, and they kept Life Day, like the fact they kept some things in the canon is ridiculous.
Life Day, yub nub.
Yub nub. No, it's a different song for you for Life Day.
No, I know. I'm just saying we'll sing yub nub on Life Day in celebration.
I don't know, but I don't think because I think Life Day is a traditionally Wookiee holiday, but yub nub is a traditional Ewokese. In a Ewokese dialect. Anyway, Yoda was originally not meant to appear in the film, but Marquand strongly felt that returning to Dagobah was essential to resolve the dilemma raised by the previous film. Sidebar, it doesn't. It just feels like a random insert that, if anything, makes the previous film weirder, because the whole point is that he left before finishing his training. And I thought, okay, maybe he's come back a few times to train with Yoda, but watching it now, it seems to imply that this is the first time he's been back since he left in the last movie.
Yeah.
And Yoda's like, oh, you don't need any more training. It's like, so what, huh?
Well,
what changed, Yoda?
He left. He's getting field work.
He's getting real-world experience.
He's a self-taught dude.
The inclusion led Lucas to insert a scene in which Yoda confirms that Darth Vader is Luke's father because, after discussion with the children's psychologist, he did not want younger moviegoers to dismiss Vader's claims as a lie.
It does seem like a lie. Because it seems so random. Because you're like, what? You just cut my fucking hand off. You're my father?
First off, are you even human?
What?
Let alone my father.
Like, who are you? How do you... If I don't know you, how do you know me? How do you know that I am the Luke Skywalker?
Well, Luke is
your son?
Luke is the Osama bin Laden of this universe. He did blow up the...
But he...
Which is a very funny College Humor video of stormtroopers talking about the destruction of the Death Star like it was 9/11.
Oh, geez.
And they'll be like, oh, you know what today is? And he's like, you know what? It's crazy how, I overslept. I was supposed to go to the Death Star that day.
Oh my god.
I missed it. And it's like, why can't we find one guy hiding in a cave somewhere in Dagobah? How hard? Because we couldn't find Osama bin Laden for like years.
Oh.
It's a really funny video.
Yeah.
And they're like, and some guy's like, you know what? I think it was an inside job. And the Emperor let it happen just so he could justify invading Hoth.
I could see that being.
It was a really fun. It's a funny video.
The Emperor would do that. But, I mean, theoretically, he knew in the first movie because he didn't just all of a sudden want to start hunting them down. He was hunting them down in the first one, too.
No, he's not hunting down Luke in the first one.
I guess not.
He's looking for the droids. He's not looking for Luke. Which I
know-
guess he
I know,
created C-3PO as we find out in the
But
prequels.
then later, he gets lumped in, though.
Yeah. Also, push your mic closer to you.
Oh, why?
I just want to make sure our listeners can hear all your authentic self as we established in the first couple minutes.
I'm just being my own person.
Yeah. Okay. Many ideas from the original script were left out or changed. For instance, the Ewoks were going to be Wookiees, and the Millennium Falcon was going to land on Endor, which it never does. Following the defeat of the Emperor, the film was originally intended to end with Obi-Wan and Yoda returning to life from their spectral existence of the Force, along with Anakin Skywalker, thanks to Yoda being able to prevent him from becoming one with the Force. They would then join the rest of the characters in their celebration on Endor.
I don't think the Force gives you zombie powers.
Or you reconstitute, rather.
Yeah, like resurrection.
In terms of the casting, so notably, Darth Vader Unmasked is not David Prowse nor James Earl Jones. It is Sebastian Shaw, who is like a classical English actor. Mm-hmm. Before Sebastian Shaw was selected for the Unmasked Darth Vader, Marquand originally wanted a deformed visage of a famous stage British actor such as Laurence Olivier or John Gielgud, but Lucas was worried that a known actor would distract people who, quote, wouldn't take it seriously, end quote. So they just picked like a good working actor.
It would be kind of random, but...
If you open up his mouth, it's like... That'd be like
it's Laurence Olivier. You're like, oh.
That'd be like if it was today. And then if you open, it's like, what, that Meryl Streep? Like it's just like someone you know.
You're like, okay.
Like that's really weird.
Like I guess so, but okay.
In terms of the filming, working on a budget of $32.5 million, Lucas was determined to avoid going over budget, as had happened with Empire. The budget did end up becoming $38 million, just for the record. Kazanjian estimated that using ILM, owned wholly by Lucasfilm, for special effects saved the production approximately $18 million. However, the fact that Lucasfilm was a non-union company made acquiring shooting locations more difficult and more expensive, even though Star Wars and Empire had been big hits. This is what happens when you go
like,
outside the union system, George.
It seems like
Don't be a
union buster.
Yeah.
It seems like George is not very good when it comes to working. He's a micromanager and
not really
spending money.
Also, he really hated the unions after the first
unions.
one because remember they were filming in England and they always had to like end exactly at a certain time.
Yes.
Unless they were in the middle of the shot, in which
yeah.
case the director could ask for a vote for another 15 minutes, and they would always get turned down.
No, yeah. Going to Tunisia, got sand in the camera.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. The project was given the working title Blue Harvest, with a tagline of, quote, horror beyond imagination, end quote. This disguised what the production crew was really filming from fans and the press. Oh. So it's like if they schedule a thing like, oh yeah, we're making this movie called Blue Harvest, can we use this area of the... It would make it cheaper. Walt Disney did a similar thing when he was buying up Florida land. Mm-hmm. He used all like these fake company names.
Is that legal to... I know people do that.
Yes, you just
like,
create a legal company, yeah.
Oh, you have to create the company, you don't just like...
For the Disney thing,
put
yes.
a name on the paper.
Well, they could just say the working title of the movie, because movies have true working titles all the time. High School Musical was a working title, and then they just were like, let's just keep it named that, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
And again, like I said, also prevented price gouging, right? So it's like if you know a Star Wars movie's coming to town, you're going to raise your prices on everything, right?
Yeah.
For the Rancor, which is like the creature, the monster in Jabba's palace in the basement.
Oh, yes.
Lucas wanted to use a stunt performer in a suit in the style of the Toho Godzilla films. Oh. The production team made several attempts, but were unable to create an adequate result. Lucas eventually relented and decided to film the Rancor as a high-speed puppet, so kind of like stop motion. One of the two quote-unquote skeletal post-production units shooting background matte plates, which again is like the background, like the matte paintings, spent a day in Death Valley. The other was a special Steadicam unit shooting forest backgrounds from June 15th to the 17th, 1982 for the speeder chase near the middle of the film. Steadicam inventor Garrett Brown personally filmed these shots at less than 1 frame per second. By walking at about 5 miles per hour and projecting the footage at 24 frames per second, the motion seen in the film appeared as if it were moving at around 120 miles an hour.
I love
Isn't that really cool? Isn't that really cool?
I love science!
It is really cool. Marquand and Anthony Daniels clashed somewhat, leading to the latter recording his ADR, which is dialogue overdubs, with Lucas instead. Carrie Fisher disliked working with Marquand, which is weird because Lucas was like, oh, he works so well with the actors. All the actors said they didn't like him. He often yelled at her. On one occasion, this caused her to burst into tears, which ruined her makeup and required an hour-long redo.
Shit.
I think I read somewhere that he basically played favorites, so he would always cater to Harrison Ford. And then I guess kind of maybe be a little not so nice to someone like Carrie Fisher.
Carrie is a nepo baby. You should be paying her more attention if you're trying to get up in your career.
Yeah.
Harrison is just a carpenter. Okay.
Yeah. He's just a carpenter. Though Harrison Ford's easily the one who was the most successful post-Star Wars.
Of course.
Because he was in Indiana Jones. He was also just in a bunch of action movies in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
He's easily the most successful.
Yeah.
And then below that is Mark Hamill, because he did a lot of good voice work. He became a prolific voice actor.
Which was new to me. Yeah, I didn't
And then
know.
Carrie Fisher had some roles here and there, but she really had a career as as a ghostwriter. Mm-hmm. Basically being an uncredited kind of script doctor, kind of fixing scripts. Mm-hmm. She wrote some that was credited. Mm. I think a big one that she wrote was called Postcards from the Edge. Mm. That was a pretty well-received movie. Mm-hmm. But anyway. In terms of post-production, Lucasfilm encountered problems when it tested the film in a commercial theater. Lucas and his employees could not hear many of the sound effects they had mixed. To make matters worse, the background noise in the theater muffled the majority of the film's sound, which played through the theater's normal commercial sound system. Many theaters at the time had poor room acoustics with mono surround sound. Only mono. Lucas would solve the problem by creating a new cinema audio company, THX, which you usually see on DVDs.
Yes!
That's a Lucasfilm company.
Oh.
And ensuring that all theaters playing his movies would use the new system.
Oh.
So basically, George was he'll create technology out of a need. He'll be like, well, this, I want this to exist, but it doesn't exist yet, so let's create the technology to make this happen.
Yeah.
So we can thank him for, the fact when you go to a movie, there's, surround sound and all the...
That's crazy. Yeah, well, because I know that I know we were making fun of it earlier, but,
It's the one that's,
Yeah, THX by itself is iconic, but then, you add the 1138, then it's a little...
It's a reference to that. He's a subtle...
But the THX.
Yeah.
Classic.
Okay. The original... So we're talking about the release here. We're almost done with the background. And then we can talk about our opinions, which you've already done a lot of already. The original teaser trailer for the film carried the name Revenge of the Jedi. In December of 1982, Lucas decided... So December. So that's about maybe 5 or 6 months before the movie's coming out. So you've already started your ad campaign. You've already printed posters and stuff.
I would be pissed.
In December of 82, Lucas decided that revenge was not appropriate as a, quote, true Jedi should never seek revenge, end quote, and returned to his original title. By that time, thousands of revenge teaser posters with artwork by Drew Struzan had been printed and distributed. Lucasfilm stopped the shipping of the posters and sold the remaining stock of 6,800 posters to Star Wars fan club members for $9.50. So you could still get them. They're almost kind of like a collectible, like the original Revenge of the Jedi posters and stuff.
Which I guess you could have called it that, because it's kind of like Darth Vader, right?
I guess so. But Jedi don't take revenge, I guess.
Well, that's the point, is that he was the Jedi and he was...
But it's also like, George, you invented the Jedi. We haven't seen anything that says they don't take revenge. You...
It's just there's no bras in space business.
Return to the Jedi, Rise of the Jedi, something like that. I guess it makes sense, because Yoda makes it very clear that the Jedi are selfless and they let the Force flow through them.
I'm just saying, if you've already printed things,
I think you fucked up. It's you just kind of have to...
Too little, too late,
Yeah,
bro.
it's kind of like you're right, Jedi don't take revenge, but you should have thought of that when you got bullied into changing it the first time. The Jedi kill everybody. That would be a better time. The film made $23 million from 1,002 theaters in its opening weekend and grossed a record $45.3 million in its opening weekend. Instead, a new message go, who cares? I don't know why I put this. I don't really care. But this is, I guess, it's nearly $23,000 per theater average, which stands as a record for a nationwide release on an inflation-adjusted basis. for 36 years until it was surpassed by Avengers Endgame in 2019. So when you adjust for inflation, because whenever you see like the list of like the top 10 grossing films,
Yes.
it's just because things are more expensive now. If you adjust for inflation, I think it's like the first time you see a movie that was made after 2000, it's like way lower on the list than you would think. It's all these movies from like the 30s and the 40s, because while the tickets were like a nickel, more people, like it got more people in the theater.
Got lots of nickels.
It was a lot of nickels. A big jar. Look how many nickels we got.
Oh, imagine counting a large jar of nickels. Actually, I've done that before. You done that before?
When I was a kid.
Empty your piggy bank.
Like what was it called? The thing where you would go and you would, what's it called when you do your quarters and
you
coins?
like dump it in the Coinstar, money star.
Coinstar or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were like, I want dollars, but I have like 30 pennies or whatever.
Well, you could roll it up and go to the bank, which was annoying.
Well, yeah, but you had to self-roll.
And you had to buy the paper.
Yes.
So you're losing money.
Well, sometimes I would just go and say hello, and then just dump a handful of coins, and then the bank teller.
The teller, and this is back when there was like a bunch of tellers, just like.
And they're like, okay, well, this is gonna be a minute. Let me count your $5 out in nickels and dimes.
Nickels and dimes. So what do we think?
Woo.
You know I have lots to say, but I don't want to.
I thought it was cute, but there were some times where I was uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable?
Yeah, like Jabba's tongue, and also,
well, you're supposed to be uncomfortable.
And then also Carrie being like practically naked.
She becomes like a sex slave almost.
But then like when she's just laying there, okay. But then she starts getting involved in the action, and then you're like, shit, this bitch ain't got no clothes on. But she's gonna slip something. Something's gonna come out.
Many young boys' sexual awakening was this movie.
It's like something is gonna slip out here.
Like, well, I think I activated my lightsaber. Something.
Ew. Ew.
my little prepubescent penis.
Ew.
Anyway.
And then cute, cool.
Cute, cool.
And a little disappointing
Kooky.
at the end.
Disappointing. What did you want him to say? Like, I'm gonna go start a school.
I
guys, Beyonce just called me to lead her world tour. Like on Glee?
I know what you're saying. No, I don't know what I was expecting, but it just seems like everything was so epic. Like, you know, you hear all these stories about Darth Vader, and then you see Luke go on his journey, and then it's just like, just a party with Ewoks. All right.
Yeah,
that's
like,
it for the entire fucking franchise. You see what I'm saying? Like
it feels kind of like very small.
Like at all. Okay, sure, but then like that's all you get for like almost 20 years. That seems like a little weak. You know, like that's all.
That's why I give the prequels a lot of credit. That for even if it wasn't executed very well, they did a good job of making the universe feel larger. Mm-hmm. Even if it was really poorly executed, we at least had an understanding of like what is the socio-political paradigm. Yeah. Whereas like when you watch these three films and you're not reading comics and books and games, like additional auxiliary material, I have because ultimately they're meant to be fairy tales. That's George Lucas's whole thing. They're not meant to be any deeper than like a fairy tale. But it's like when I'm watching these three movies, I never really get a sense of like, how does the Empire work? We get a little bit of it in the first one. They're talking about the Senate being dissolved.
I mean, I guess that's fine, like, to be more of a fairy tale, but it doesn't have those fairy tale, like, story beats.
It wants to have its cake and eat it too.
To even use that as an excuse. Like, not saying that there has to be, like, a love story or whatever, but, like, the classic, like, oh, we're in love, running off into the sunset, whatever, like, Cinderella type thing. I mean, that's Leia.
Fairy tales are
she's not the main character. The main person we want to see stuff happen to is Luke, because that's what's been going on.
Fairy tales are very basic. And not in a bad way. It's that they speak to something like archetypal and primal in human psychology. This movie is more complicated than a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. So by virtue of that, it's like you have to go all the way now, and like you need to define some stuff. Like, how does the Empire work? what is the universe like? Like, because we really only see... Like, we get a little bit in the last one with Cloud City, but it's like, at least with the next one, we get a sense of, like...
Which is illegal.
Yeah, I guess. Also avoiding the unions. So my kind of problem... So I completely agree with you that the movie kind of ends and it's like... Furthermore, and again, this is answered in other Star Wars media, like, okay, what... In 1977, we watched them blow up the Death Star. And when you're watching that as a kid, you think the Empire's been defeated. And then you find out later, actually, no, that was just part of the Empire. So when you're watching this in 1983, does the Empire still exist? Was this a major blow to the Empire, but there's still work to be done? Like, we don't have a sense of, like, what's the status quo now, right?
Yeah, well, for me, because, I mean, it's like...
And that's always annoyed me.
After everything, right, so you got the first one, and then, you know, got the second one, or whatever, and then this one, and he's done all these, like, epic things, and at the end of the day, he's just a dude. And it's like, okay, well, he was just a dude on Tatooine, but now he's got a metal hand and a lightsaber.
And some magic powers.
But, like, no, there's no other Jedis. And, like, okay, now I have a sister, but she doesn't really know... Like, there's no really indication that she is also a Jedi, so it's like... Okay, just a single man who saved the universe and has a sister. Like, okay. Like, that's it? That's all he gets for saving the whole fucking universe? It's just like, I don't know.
Like a barbecue with the Ewoks?
It just seems a little strange. Like, it's a good ending, but just, like, for the entire whole wrap-up thing with all the drama of Darth Vader and, like, I feel like he had a more interesting story than Luke did. Not to be controversial.
Lucas later even said, you know, once he decided to do the prequels, he was like, really, this is a 6-part story about Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, honestly. Because, like, not much happens with Luke. Which, like, I guess is fine, but then, like...
Well, like, this... Have you ever seen the meme?
I don't know.
Have you ever seen the meme? And I don't know how I even describe it. It's like a drawing of a horse, and, like, the first half of it is, like, really realistic, and then the second half is, like, someone, like, who doesn't know how to draw, just, like, drew with a pencil, like, the rest of the horse.
Okay.
If you look up horse drawing meme,
Okay.
you'll see it. I'm gonna look it up, too, to see if I can use it for reference. Let me
There's 2 different kinds, but yeah.
Let me send you. So I just sent you the picture of what I'm thinking of. So it's a horse. So like the right half of, like, the lower body of the horse is really well drawn, and then the one on the left is, like, horribly drawn. Mm-hmm. Do you see the picture? Or no, you don't have your iCloud set up?
Oh, I see that one.
Right? That's kind of how this trilogy feels. Mm-hmm. Where in this version of the trilogy, in this version of the meme, the first third of the horse is, like, is drawn pretty well. Mm-hmm. The middle section of the horse is drawn almost photorealistically. Mm-hmm. And then the last third is, like, the shitty part. Where it's like, it's taking the stuff that was set up in the last one and doesn't ruin it, just kind of bungles it. It just kind of doesn't stick the landing. Mm-hmm. Like, they set up, they created a great path forward. They just didn't quite know what to do. Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, okay, is there still a rebellion? Are they a part of it? Like, he just did all that stuff secretly and, like, no one knows about it? Like
what is the Emperor's relationship to, especially because now we get the Emperor.
Well,
so we should talk about the Emperor because now because we got him in the last one as, like, a quick hologram.
Yeah.
But now he's, like, an actual character.
But he's dead. I'm talking about, like, at the end.
Oh. Well, I'm just saying throughout the whole trilogy, but I guess, yeah. At the end, and notably, I don't know how they did it in the old canon. I believe in the old canon, this was the end of the Empire. More or less. I believe in the new canon, they made it so that this is, like, the second to last battle. Mm. And there's one final battle. And it's at Jakku, which is the sand planet in Force Awakens. Because basically Disney was like, we want to connect this new movie to the ones people like, so we'll make it actually, you know what? The final battle of that war was actually on this new planet, you're gonna see it in the new movie. Come see it 12 times, and have it make over $200 billion or $2 billion or whatever it is.
Okay, maybe that makes more sense.
So I don't know. So maybe that's not fair to this because it's not looking to craft this really detailed universe. Mm-hmm. But at least, again, later on, Star Wars does kind of give us a little bit more detail. Mm-hmm. In the films, not just auxiliary media. Yeah. So it's hard in a sense, and maybe this is so Gen Z, like, oh, it's so old. It's kind of hard for me to go back, even to Empire Strikes Back, which I think is like one of the best movies ever made. Mm-hmm. That works because it's so focused on the characters. I don't care as much about what else is going on in the universe. Mm-hmm. But the first one has this problem, but especially this one, I want to understand, like, what is the status quo of this universe?
Yeah. And it's not like it's like bad or anything. I just feel like it's like, I don't know if I would even say like disappointing, but it's just kind of a letdown because it's like, okay, after all this epic stuff, what does Luke get? A good night's rest? Like, like a barbecue and a good night's rest? That's all he gets? It's like, so that's my thing. I just feel like, oh, okay. Like, what does he do now? He got pulled into this war, and now it's presumably over. Now what?
Yeah.
Is he gonna go back to farming moisture?
Take over his homestead. Now that his uncle and aunt are dead. Do you think someone's moved in since then?
I'll have to sweep up the skeletons.
Has someone moved in since then, or?
If they swept up the skeletons. I don't know.
Did he clean up?
I don't think so. I think
he just left.
Walked away.
He was just like, fuck this shit.
He didn't even pack in or anything. No extra robes.
We do see the homestead again in episode 9 when Rey goes for some reason. And there's no skeleton. So at some point, someone has cleaned it up.
It's empty or people live
empty
there?
Empty.
Yeah. Empty. Well, they probably disintegrated at that point. Isn't it like 500 years?
No,
not 500.
30?
30 years, yeah.
Maybe 40, but...
I don't know.
It may have disintegrated, but it hasn't been thousands of years or hundreds of years. It's been like a couple decades.
I'm thinking of Mandalorian.
That's even less time. The Mandalorian is like a couple of years after Return of the Jedi.
No, I thought it was... What is the one that's like 100 years in advance?
The video game I played was like thousands of years before, but that was a video game. Knights of the Old Republic. Okay. Mandalorian takes place 6 years after Return of the Jedi. Luke shows up in it! At the end of season 2!
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Are you daft,
So maybe
woman?
I'm thinking about the video game or something.
You're thinking about the video game. Let's see. I have all these thoughts. Where should I start? Okay, so we talked about this a little bit, but my big beef with this movie is that it just feels what?
Wait, if that's
why are you like this?
If that's the case, did Yoda give birth to Grogu before he?
No, they're not. It's not his father. They're just the same species.
I know, but he just so happens to find another Yoda, and out of all of the galaxy.
Yeah, but he doesn't know Yoda. So to him, it's the first one.
No, but Luke.
Oh, I don't know.
Luke meets Grogu.
Well, I haven't seen later seasons of The Mandalorian, but from my understanding, Grogu was trained. He was like the Anakin Ahsoka era, and yet somehow survived because he's like 70 in The Mandalorian. But because that species lives so long, he's still like a baby. Can I continue?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
If that is the case.
Wait, because I was like, maybe when he died, he left an egg, and then the egg hatched on Dagobah.
Dagobah.
And then someone found him, and then took him somewhere else, and now he's with the Mandalorian. I don't know.
Can I continue?
Yes, you keep asking. Continue.
Well, because then you'll be like, and another thing.
Well, I was just thinking about Grogu.
Does Yoda have nipples? We never see him shirtless. Does that species have nipples?
I don't want him to have nipples. Oh, also that was so sad. Shit.
What, Yoda dying?
Why he gotta die?
I don't know.
He's 900 years old. What's another 900?
I don't know. It was... Part of me almost wishes he wasn't in this movie. Because he's literally just there. Like, we were talking earlier about, like, you feel the writer's hand. That whole scene feels like you feel the writer's hand in a bad way. Like, and we literally know this isn't conjecture. We know they put this scene in so they could have Yoda, someone the audience and the kids respect, to say, yes, Darth Vader is your father.
Yeah.
And then the scene immediately following, he talks to Obi-Wan, and we have to somehow explain how Leia is his sister, right?
That's
both of these scenes don't feel like a great scene involves characters with goals, doing things.
Why did they add
This scene
her?
is literally just about exposition. Both of those scenes are just exposition.
Why did they add her? Just because she was a part of the group and needed a backstory?
So,
Like, what's the point of him having a sister?
So
a twin sister.
Okay, so I'll put a pin in what I was gonna talk about how it's a lazy retread of the first movie, but now you brought this up.
Oh.
So
I'm just saying they already
Leia,
they brought the father thing.
This
the
is
sister thing on top of it.
This is one of the most underwhelming, disappointing things, and not just this film, but the whole franchise. And yes, I say that fully understanding the Star Wars, all the movies in the Star Wars franchise.
Them being siblings.
Yes.
It's weird.
Because, well, let me tell you. Let me learn you something.
Disappointing?
Yes, because so they set up in the last one, there was another.
Yeah.
And that sends fans into a frenzy for 3 years, theory crafting, trying to figure out, like, who could that be? I wonder what that's going to be like.
Of course.
Right?
The fans.
And in this movie, they reveal it so haphazardly and unceremoniously. When Yoda's dying, we joked about this while we were watching, about 12 times he goes, Luke. And then we'll say something. Like, he'll tell Luke something important.
Like he's gonna die.
And then he'll be like, Luke. He'll just keep doing it in sequence. And the last one is, there is another Skywalker. And then he dies.
And then he disappears.
Right? So we set this up because we know there's another. We didn't necessarily know that he was related to Luke.
Yeah.
They just say there is another. That just might mean there's another Jedi somewhere who's still alive.
Which you would think so, because there was Obi, and you know,
right?
so they could be scattered or wherever.
Like, there was no indication that this was going to be Luke's twin sister. That was not something that would have been the immediate thought when you're watching Empire Strikes Back, right? So now we reveal Luke there's another Skywalker. What does that mean? They tell us in 3 minutes later. There's no. It's like they set up this interesting thing that perhaps could have been the inciting incident that disrupts the status quo. It's immediately resolved 3 minutes later when he's like, yes, you had a twin sister I never told you about. And we kept her safe and sound. And Luke's like, Leia! She's the only woman in the universe, so of course she's my sister. Right? It feels so lazy on the writer's parts.
So random, but... I mean,
It feels lazy that the answer is that the other
Yeah.
is Luke's sister. And it's even lazier and more dumb that the Luke's sister is Leia. And it makes the universe feel smaller. Like, it's like, oh wow, they just happen to cross paths completely randomly. Like, that's a big... I guess it's, again, fairy tale logic, but
Yeah.
it just bothers me more on a narrative level.
I would be pissed if I were Luke, right? Because it's like this whole Prince and Pauper thing, I think, like...
Like, why did she get...
She gets to be a whole ass senator's daughter and like...
grow up in royalty.
Like,
he lived in the
and,
sticks.
and I'm like a moisture farmer with Uncle Ben drinking blue milk, and she's up there with all her silks and such. You couldn't put me in another wealthy Endor family or
It's
whatever it's called,
Alderaan.
family, or even Hoth. Something.
It's just so annoying
It'd be Tatooine.
because it. All right.
Like,
Are you trying to make a point? Are you just trying to say all the Star Wars planet names you can remember?
no, I'm just saying, because
You're like, well, this and then Hoth and then.
well, because they just describe it as such a shithole, and then it's like just a bear.
Why did she get to go? Because in Revenge of the Sith, when they're figuring out where to set him up, Bail Organa's like, oh, my wife and I have always wanted a daughter.
But not a son.
But not a son! But this is just so annoying because it's one of those things that we'll see with Star Wars where it's something a plot point's introduced that doesn't quite contradict anything that came before, but it's just kind of like okay question mark like, and I'm just like,
I feel like it also
like what does it add? Like, I guess that's the question. What does it add to the narrative? Like, what does it add literally to the story? Or the thematic ambitions. My thesis is it doesn't add anything to either. Because how does it play into the story?
I think
it never does.
I think it would if she was in touch with the Force. But
they never lean into her.
Both like not in touch with the Force until he's like shown. But then, oh, this is my twin sister, and she knows nothing about the Force, presumably, or whatever, you know, or is not connected to it in any way. And so it's like, okay, so people are just quote unquote Jedis, just walking around being normal people, or is it like, you know, Obi kind of made it seem like it was like a whole thing, like, you know, people getting taken when they're like young and getting trained and all this stuff.
Well, no. That's a prequel invention.
Oh, is that he said?
They never say they take children away when they're young, and that's a prequel invention.
Well, I mean him training Anakin, like he talks about that, or being his partner, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, in this, it was always kind of implied that anyone could tap into the Force. Certain people are more. It's like being a good athlete. Like, you can practice. Like, if you're tall,
so anyone could do it. It's not just.
But you have to have there's certain things that you can't control.
Oh, okay.
Like, you might not be good at it. Okay. Like, anyone can play basketball, but if you're 6'2",
oh, okay.
you still need practice, and you still need to refine your skills.
That was like something you're kind of like born with. It's
well,
like,
the same thing. Some people are born with natural tennis skills.
Yeah.
Right, but raw talent only takes you so far. The prequels is where they make it to be. It's almost like a biological, like
midi-chlorians,
the midi-chlorians, right? So, but in this, so I don't mind that she's not in tune with the Force right away because she's never exercised that muscle.
But I think it would add more to them being siblings if maybe she knew, right? She was in politics and whatnot, and also like had these powers, and then he starts to, you know, feel a little something, and it's kind of like her guiding him through, like, puberty or whatever, you know, just like learning how to be in touch with it or whatever, because then she could kind of fill in for Obi once he dies, right? Or, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna leave Yoda and not finish my training, but, you know, I'm here and I can give you tips and tricks, like.
And why would Yoda and Obi-Wan say there's another? She's even less trained.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
The whole thing just doesn't make sense. I've often thought a fun creative exercise would be to rewrite this movie.
Fun creative exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny about that?
I don't know. It's like, what is this, summer camp?
Some of us like to challenge ourselves and do things for development, not just because of outward, like there's two kinds of people. People who did well in school because they were intrinsically motivated, and then there's people that were very extrinsically. I feel like you were very extrinsically motivated.
I don't know, it just...
Anyway, I've always thought it'd be an interesting creative exercise to rewrite this movie. And I think one of the biggest opportunities to make it better would be to kill two birds with one stone, solve two problems with the same plot point. Where
I'm familiar with
you can, no, but I'm saying how it applies to this, like basically do two different things that will solve two problems with one single moment.
Yes.
And that moment would be like the battle on Endor. We've already seen Luke and Vader fight. And that was already the climactic, that was already the climax of the last movie.
Yeah.
So in this movie, it's also the climax.
Yeah.
Right? I think it would have been a cool bait and switch if we have this fight and you think this is like the final whatever. And then the Emperor is like, ha ha ha, you don't know. My plan, I know about your twin sister. We're going to turn her to the dark side, right?
And you're like, what?
And you're like, what? I just found out. How do you know? So we have this issue with Han just kind of being there. Because for all intents and purposes, he was going to get killed off, and then they decided not to. It's like the reverse Obi-Wan problem. Remember, he was just going to be in it the whole time, and then they were like, he has nothing to do once they get off the Death Star.
Yeah.
So it's like the reverse problem. Where because they decided not to kill him, Han's just kind of there doing stuff.
It's just because he's cool and you get...
But he doesn't do any cool Han Solo stuff. He's just doing anything anyone else is doing.
You get 3 things out of it. If you kill him off, you're not getting him, you're not getting Chewie, and you're not getting the Millennium Falcon.
Chewie, they wouldn't die.
No, but they wouldn't be in it. And
Yes, they would.
Not necessarily.
Why would they not? That makes no sense. Why would they be like, I'm abandoning our
He could go
rebellion.
back home to his family.
Okay, assume he doesn't.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying merchandise-wise.
Oh, okay. But anyway, so you have this issue with Han. So the Emperor reveals this plan. Like, you were always like Luke, you were always your sister is even more powerful than you.
Yeah.
But she doesn't even know it. She doesn't even know she has...
Yes.
Right? She's basically a sleeping giant in a sense, right?
That'd be a good one.
We go back to Endor, and they kill Han. And that awakens in her
Oh, it's
this
like a
rage.
Yeah.
And she, in her anger, like, without even realizing what she's even doing,
Yeah.
starts... This may be hard with the VFX of the time, but, like, starts throwing the ATSTs around the forest.
Yes.
Is killing. And then, so the issue is not the battle over Luke's soul, which was the last movie. But they try to do it again here. Because something that people always talk about, both people that made this movie talk about this, and then people who like this movie talk about this. This idea that this movie is about, Luke maybe teetering, like, is he going to turn to the dark side?
There's no indication.
Precisely, right? And this was hyped for a while. So the first teaser trailer was, I think, like, really the only major footage in it was, you remember in this movie when Darth Vader brings Luke to the Emperor and the Death Star and the elevator opens up and Luke and Darth Vader standing next to each other in an elevator, like, not trying to kill each other?
Yes. Yeah.
That was the only clip, or like the major clip in this teaser trailer. So Luke's here, they're standing side by side, they're trying to kill each other, he's wearing all black. It was basically teased like, Luke might turn to the dark side.
Well, yeah, I guess that
the black outfit.
Is the new thing. Is the
We've only ever seen bad people wear black.
Yeah, I guess that is a visual
right
kind of indication.
Right. The very first time we see him when he comes into Jabba's palace, he's choking the guards. Who have we seen do that? Right? No, I think it's dumb. You're right. It's not indicated at all. But they're trying to give us these little crumbs like, maybe Luke's turning to the dark side. Or maybe he's getting a little flying too close to the sun, right? But then Yoda, after Jabba's palace, Yoda, you would think Yoda would be like, not only are you not better off than you were when you left me, you're even closer to the dark side than you were before. What does he say in this movie? You are a Jedi Master. You no more training do you require. Right? And then from that point on, Luke is not dark-sidey at all.
It's like, what were you gonna train him on anyways, if he's a master now?
Right? So I get annoyed that, like, if this movie really wanted to explore Luke, because the last one is about the battle for his soul, like, he's kind of somewhere in the middle. If you wanted it to be that he's kind of almost like a little bit gone off the deep end, he should have killed Jabba. I like that Leia does it because it's kind of female empowerment, getting revenge on your abusers.
She just does what needs to be done.
Right? But that could have been a valuable thematic moment. Right? And then Yoda is like, I sense in you, I know what you've done, I know what... Like, not just that, but there's been other times. Like, it could have been this thing where the movie actually is, like, wrestling with, like, how close can you get to the edge before you fall over?
Yeah.
Right? So in this other version of the story that I would masterfully rewrite, Luke goes through his whole arc of realize he's about to kill Vader, and he's like, and then he realizes, I'm not gonna do this. I'll never turn to the dark side. And he kind of learns his lesson. And the Emperor could be like, no, we know you were just the backup. Your sister's the one we really want. And then Han dies, he gets killed or something, and she goes into rage. Because basically she has all this power, she doesn't know she has it.
Yeah.
and just awakens in her.
Yeah.
Right? And she's fighting. So then the climax is Luke pulling her back from the edge. So really kill 3 birds with 1 stone.
Interesting.
So, but this movie never really explores Luke actually really, what does that really mean to be turned to the dark side?
Yeah.
Until like that last moment when Darth Vader's like, maybe we will go after your sister. I just found out it exists because I read your mind. And then Luke goes ballistic for about a minute. That's all we get.
Maybe we're dumb for not seeing that, but I feel like it wasn't made super clear.
No, I didn't realize this until I was an adult. I never as a kid thought, oh, he's like kind of teetering. I never thought that as a kid.
Because we saw Obi do the mind tricks, right? So obviously doing mind tricks is within the moral grounds of being a Jedi.
Exactly.
You know, so it's like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Han wasn't even on the... Maybe he doesn't even die on Endor. Like, maybe he leads the Death Star assault.
What? He's just a dude.
So is Lando.
Oh, I guess.
What do you when you say these things? Like, what are you talking about? They're all just dudes.
It just seems. One day smuggler, next day war general.
Right? But I feel like they wanted to give Lando something to do, so they were like, we'll have Lando do it.
Yes.
But really, it should be Han,
random.
because even though he does come to help at the end of the first one, it would kind of be an interesting kind of bookending, because he refused to take part in the first one. He comes in and saves the day at the end, but he refuses.
Yeah.
And it would be an interesting bookend to his character arc to see him being like, I'm leading the assault on the Death Star, right? He could have died, Leia could have sensed it, or could have heard on the radio, we lost the Millennium Falcon or whatever. And then she goes into a rage or whatever.
You love this rage.
Because then you do something with Leia. She also has nothing to do. Because it's, again, we never even explore that she's her, like what is the point of having this twist that the other is Luke's twin sister, who is Leia? What does that do for the story?
To it either.
What's that?
They don't really react to it either.
Well, I mean, Luke is like, oh, Leia's my sister. He's like shocked.
No, I mean to each other.
Oh, when he tells her,
Yeah.
I mean, she kind of looks like, the fuck?
Yeah, but you'd be like, oh my gosh, like, what?
You know what she says? To help smooth out how it makes no sense?
Yeah.
She goes, somehow I've always known.
Exactly.
Then why did you kiss him?
Then that's what I'm saying. Well, okay, looking back in context now, it wasn't a true kiss. It was just to make Han jealous.
I don't know if I would ever kiss my sister.
Well,
to make a girl jealous.
Okay, well, obviously they didn't know, but somehow she speculated.
But somehow she always knew. If you had a 1% inkling that this dude is your brother, you would not kiss him. I'm not trying to be nitpicky about plot holes here. I'm trying to, from a macro perspective, it doesn't do anything for our understanding of the characters. In terms of their arcs, obviously we understand them better as in we know more about them. But it doesn't do anything for our understanding of the characters on a narrative level. Doesn't do anything for the narrative. Doesn't do anything thematically. It literally is just like, we set up this twist and now we have to pay it off somehow.
Yeah.
And they never do anything with it.
Because you would think she would have so many questions. Like, how do you know this? Like, why were we not together? Like, what happened? Like, blah, blah, blah.
If you cut out the scene of her finding out from Luke.
And then it's like, oh, hey, our dad is Darth Vader. And she's like, shit!
If you made an edit of this movie where you just cut out the scene where he tells her that they're siblings, and you also cut out the scene where Leia later tells Han.
That was weird, too.
Right? Okay, but save that for a second. If you cut out those two scenes, the movie plays exactly the same,
Yeah.
and nothing is lost, and you're not watching the scenes after Luke reveals this to Leia and going, I feel like I'm missing a puzzle piece here.
Yeah.
Like, those scenes happen, like, regardless of whether she knows that they're siblings or not.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't play into anything that happens later at all.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most disappointing. That's what I mean. It's one of the most disappointing parts of this whole franchise. Is this complete missed opportunity? Is it partially sexism? Maybe.
Or what?
Just like, well, we can't have a major character. We can't. That fans wouldn't like that. We can't focus on Leia and make her an integral part to the narrative, unless it's just a love plot.
Oh, well then, I mean, it was. Already,
I don't know.
It was already done at that point. So
I'm just saying that it feels
from
weird.
Not making a female lead from the first time.
I don't know.
That's where you're coming at it from. But
it's just disappointing that there's just so much potential there.
yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it's fine and it makes sense or whatever. But it's just like. Okay.
I think it.
But it's
that's exactly it.
It's such a big thing, but then they're just like, I always knew.
Something that should be so earth-shattering for the characters' status quo and understanding of themselves and others is more or less just like a, okay.
That's
like, it kind of doesn't end up really mattering.
That's what I thought about when he learned that Vader was his father, too. But
he reacts really badly to that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. I think he could have done some more. But then...
What he wanted to do, he literally goes, no! Like, what more could he have done? His eyeballs pop out of his socket? Like,
like
what else would he do?
I don't know, just like questioning him and like you're a liar, blah blah blah. Like, I don't know. Whatever.
My point is that the movie just doesn't.
But they also said, okay, for when there was mass genocide and they blew up
The Death Star.
Taboo. No.
Oh. Alderaan.
Alderaan?
Yes, for the 800th time. Alderaan.
Okay.
You keep saying Naboo, Endor, it's Alderaan.
Alderaan. And then Endor is
The
forest.
Yes. Okay. Oy vey. What are we gonna do with you? We gotta get you studying on Wikipedia.
Oh my God.
You gotta start studying. You gotta learn these terms. I'm not gonna keep doing this if you don't know these terms.
Sorry.
But you literally said Naboo once. That hasn't even been introduced yet.
I know.
Talk about planets that don't even exist yet.
I know, but I remember I connect Naboo with a
Female character?
yes, but like a not rich.
Royalty?
Yes, like royal lady, and then something happens to it. So I'm like, okay, so that's.
Naboo doesn't blow up though.
But we never go there.
We do. We go in the
do.
most of the first one takes place there. Of the Phantom Menace. By first one I mean episode 1, not the first.
Never mind.
Anywho. So yeah, so this movie just annoys me because it's like you had all of the pieces there, you just didn't know how to put them together. And it's really disappointing. I don't know if it's Lawrence or it's Lucas or it's both of them. I don't know who it is or what the reason is. Another thing that really annoys me is that it's another Death Star. It really pisses me off.
Well, when you get knocked down, you get back up again. So
I'm not. You have to take a step back from the diegetic reason. I'm talking about narratively. What does it do for the narrative?
Well, they should have like regrouped on wherever else,
right?
Naboo or whatever.
Ultimately, if George Lucas is to be believed, which
where's the Senate?
They're dissolved.
No, I know.
Coruscant.
But is that on
Coruscant? There was talks of including Coruscant.
Coruscant? A croissant? Anyways, so
there was talks in this movie of including the Empire's homeworld, which was not yet named. Then they scrapped it.
Well, I was gonna say, so maybe they regrouped, came out of space, and they're like, building something on Coruscant.
Coruscant. It's very easy to say.
Coruscant.
Jesus.
Trying to remember.
Remember, I just told you. There's no remembering involved. It's just repeating what I said.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. But so if what George Lucas has said in interviews is to be believed, supposedly he came up with a story in the mid-70s, and it was too long, so he broke up into thirds.
Yes.
But by consequence, the first third didn't have an ending, so he just moved the ending of the third one to the end of the first one.
Yes.
And then basically he was like, well, we had to do it again because that was always going to be the real ending. But that's debatable again because it's debatable how much he had actually planned out. But if that were true...
But couldn't you just make a new one?
Well, that's the thing is, like, George...
you wrote it!
You're the one who created this situation for yourself. Right? And so my feeling has always been that if you're going to do it again, you have to, like, up the ante somehow. Mm-hmm. Like, it needs to be bigger and better. I don't mean physically bigger, but, like, it needs to be even more menacing. So, like, it should have been a more evil doomsday weapon.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you kind of see that played out in Episode 7, they create Star Killer Base, which essentially, because that movie also is a retread of the first one, which we'll talk about. But that one is even more terrifying because it basically pulls a sun. It derives its power by sucking up the energy from a sun and uses it to blow up planets.
Oh.
Right? Something like that.
That's not good.
I always thought it'd be interesting, again, how you up the ante. And part of this is me just copying other stuff, but this came out after Return of the Jedi. In the Halo video games, Halo is this ancient Halo planet that exists to kill... Basically, in ancient civilization, there was this, like, parasitic aliens called the Flood. They're almost like little bugs that infect every living creature.
Bugs.
So, the ancient civilization created a bunch of halos across the galaxy. So if the Flood were ever to escape, basically they contained them. If they were ever to escape, the halos would kill all biological life to kill the Flood's food source. In this, they should have had it so that it's like some souped up Death Star, where the first one was almost a prototype. This one, the Emperor uses his force power. He connects with the Death Star, and he uses it to destroy all life in the universe so he can remake life in his own image, and he can like create his own version of the universe whereas he is essentially the god of. That's just one idea. That would up the ante. Instead of upping the ante, we don't even get the same Death Star. It's like a diet Death Star. I believe it's smaller, or maybe it's bigger, but in any case, it's like not even finished being made, which is a cool visual design to see it like half finished.
And he's still not the main dude, though, because he's still doing the Emperor's bidding, so...
Yeah, Vader's almost regressed, character-wise. Like, he's even more of the Emperor's lapdog. Like, we don't get any of, like, that interesting character stuff that we got in the last one. Yeah. Even taking out the stuff that I was projecting onto the last one. Like, even just what's there, you don't have any of that here. And most of his scenes in this movie, he's just kind of, like, walking around all pathetic, just like, whatever, I have to obey my master.
Becoming good?
No, it's not him becoming good.
Or, like...
He's just a bitch. He's just the Emperor's bitch. Right? So we don't get, like, anything interesting with him. He's just kind of this wimpy, just kind of like, I'm just gonna do whatever he tells me to do. Blah, blah, blah. Whereas in the last one, he felt like a very active participant in his own story. Right? Now you can make an argument. He was so active because he was hoping he could get Luke to join him, and then they could overthrow the Emperor. Now he knows there's no hope of that, so he's just kind of like resigned to his life. But none of that's text. That's all projection. That's projecting.
Yeah.
Onto the story. I feel like we don't get any of that in this. Like, he's not meant to be any different from the last one. It's just not written as well. Diegetically, he's not meant to be any different, I think.
Yeah, I don't think anything is different. I mean, because he knew beforehand, and I mean, he did the one like talking to him thing, but then other than that, I mean, I don't think there's.
And why does Luke believe there's still good in him? There is.
I don't know.
There is, but how would Luke know?
When was that ever conveyed?
It was never conveyed.
Or it's just
the last time Luke and Vader encountered was in Cloud City.
Yeah.
And then, by the time Luke's saying there's still good in him, I can feel it. It's before they meet again. There's no... What changed? So, the answer is just because, well, we want to do this arc where he becomes good, so we need to have Luke feel the goodness. That's a really interesting arc, and that's one of the best things about this movie that people latch onto, is this idea that Luke is the unwavering optimist that always sees the good in people. Right? But I just don't see how we get that. I understand the thematic reason for constructing your script that way, but narratively...
They could have done different things to
yeah, it just feels like Vader's turn to the good side. It feels unearned. That it's like, what has changed in Luke for him to have that assessment? Like, I think I can turn him to the good side. And what has changed in Vader to allow that to happen? And too much of it is you as the audience member have to kind of fill in the gaps, and not in a good way, but more in a, they didn't really do their homework, so I have to do it now. And kind of figure out, well, why would that even be?
Like, maybe if...
It just feels lazy. That's my recurring theme of this movie. It just feels like the most basic surface level idea for moments and themes and scenes, but they don't do enough of the work to make it feel as rich as like the last one felt for me.
Yeah, I feel like anything like even something small, right? So I don't know, the Emperor buys them from Jabba or something. I don't know. Somehow they get captured by the Emperor. Right?
It'd be cool if they made that first part actually connected to the narrative.
And then, right? And then they just so happen to escape, but really Darth Vader just kind of like gave them a head start, right? And like kind of let them go. And then he's like, oh no, I have to go catch them, right? And then Luke can be like, oh, maybe he does care.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen.
No, it does not happen. And I also wrote here, I almost wish... if you're gonna do this whole Jabba thing, like, it would have been cool to integrate it more, where it's like the Empire as this like fascist bureaucratic state is collaborating with the underworld, the seedy criminal element, right? To the point where like wouldn't have it maybe I'm not saying this would have been good, and in my version of the story, I wouldn't necessarily write it this way. But maybe it could have been cool if like this whole thing of rescuing Han happened later in the story. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and I was gonna say maybe moving up their fight and encounter, right? So then,
like get it out of the way. It's kind of a bait and switch.
Like Vader, like literally just saves him, right, from the Emperor, throws him off, whatever. Same scene, and then he's like, oh, maybe he is good, you know? And then like, I don't know.
Or does something else to suggest that he's good, like like it's something where it's like there's some encounter or some situation, and Vader basically has the ability to just like completely kill Luke, but doesn't.
That's what I mean.
And Luke is like, huh?
Because like it's fine, like you, like this could happen.
It's just thin.
But
it's just all the pieces are there. It's just you haven't filled. It's all of the beats on paper make sense. But you didn't put enough meat on the skeleton to be like a fleshy person that like is like a real person.
Because I feel like his only explanation would be that because he's his father.
But that doesn't feel character. That doesn't feel character.
That's literally it. Like the only reason he still has good in him is because he's his father. Like he's given no other indication. You know, so it's like, well, that's kind, but who's to say that's gonna work, right? I mean, obviously it does. It ends.
It's
up
like
working out.
he's right, but he has no reason to think that.
Yeah.
Is the thing. He happens to be right, but incidentally or coincidentally.
Yeah, because it's like you just met this man. You don't know anything about him.
You've only been in the same room like one time.
You don't know anything about him. You cut your hand off. What do you mean?
So I don't know. This movie, just to me, and again, like I said, this is a movie in that class of movies where hearing me talk about it, you would think I think this is like one of the worst movies ever made. It's a net positive, but I don't need to really go into a lot of the good things because like they're obvious. Like the VFX are great. Probably the best of the whole trilogy. You know, there's good again, like I like a lot of this stuff on paper. The story beats, maybe I would rearrange them and add some stuff.
Cool
but
aliens. Cool
there's cool aliens. There's cool
weapons. I mean the speeders. But.
Yeah, like there's cool moments. There's cool, but it just feels like it's like you bought the really expensive ingredients at Whole Foods, but you're just an awful chef. So it's like you have all these ingredients, but you like, you know what I mean? It's like just because you have really good ingredients doesn't mean that the cake is going to turn out well.
Yeah.
Like it still requires a certain level of execution that I feel like, and that's a good analogy. They have the prime, the grade A ingredients.
There you go.
But it's just an inexperienced chef, or a chef that's thinking about how they're going to sell the cake, as opposed to how good the cake will be.
Maybe how it looks instead of...
Yeah, like the more surface level things. You know, action figures of the cake.
Another analogy to add to your belt.
I know, I have lots of analogies.
So you can stop using the baseball one. Or at least sub it out a few times.
Like in baseball, when you sub players. Oh, But yeah, like I said, the opening extended sequence is probably the best part. It's a fun adventure. Again, it feels like there are things that are a obvious callback to the first movie, like the Star Destroyer coming over in the same way.
Yeah.
But then there's more implicit kind of just vibes things. So it's like this one's a lot more swashbuckly and fun, like the first one. Whereas the last one felt a lot more... It still had adventure to it, but it was a lot more thematic and more of a character piece. This one's more... And again, there's more creatures on display. And again, I think maybe a lot of this is... I've never thought of this until watching it this time. That maybe some of this kind of retreading is Lucas's attempt to do it right. Because in a lot of ways, as we saw with the special editions, he feels very insecure. Especially about the first one. Because there were so many limitations...
Yeah.
Budget-wise, also just for the time, there's just certain things you couldn't do technologically.
Yeah, I don't...
So it's like they do another Death Star run. I'm not gonna complain because in certain ways this one's even better because we go in the Death Star and like, oh, you got all the pipes. Like the VFX are incredible. That this was all practical effects is insane.
Yeah.
Because usually you do all the spaceship stuff and like the stop motion, but they're on like black green screen backdrops or the blue, right? This one, you have them weaving through the pipes and there's fluid camera movements, like, because oftentimes you have to lock the camera down in order to composite the stuff.
Crazy, yeah.
Like, so I don't hold anything against him for that because in certain ways this is even a better run, a trench. It's not a trench run. You know what I mean? So, we benefit from that, but it's just interesting, like, maybe that's why he's doing it. Like, there's certain things he just couldn't do in 1977 that he's now able to do in 1983. Other things are not.
Yeah.
I was
gonna say, not everything.
Again, like, vibes are eternal. You can just...
Vibes are
So,
eternal.
again, because, again, like we talked about, a lot of people complained with Empire Strikes Back, like, it was too dark, it had none of the fun and joy that the first one had. So this one kind of feels like, we're just kidding, that was just that one movie, we're fun and swashbuckling and for kids again. Like, it kind of feels like that, almost. Can we talk about how Jabba is an incredible piece of puppetry? It's insane, and that'll be one of actually I think it's the first trivia point I have here. I think it involved, like, 5 dudes in different pieces. Like, if Yoda was a masterclass in creating nuance in puppetry, and capturing the small, not because he's short, but just like how we talked about, there's like little body language movement. Jabba's like the opposite in the best way possible. That you have this giant, complex, creature that you believe is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you buy it.
It's kind of wild, honestly.
You know what I mean?
It's so impressive. It is also so gross.
Like, because you have to have someone controlling the tail, and you have someone controlling the arms, and someone controlling the mouth, and then the eyes. And because he's almost like a snake, there's the eyelids, but then there's also the vertical iris that's opening, so you have 2 different controls for the eyes.
Oh, are there?
He was like a snake, kind of. So you know how they have, like, different layers, like their eyes will open up on different levels, like, kind of? I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm imagining it, but...
Crazy.
So it's very impressive.
I thought his eyes might be robotic, but I guess not.
I'm sure there's some of it was radio controlled, but then someone's controlling that. I'm not saying someone's in there doing it, but then someone has to be controlled. It's another element that someone has to be controlling. Yeah. It's not impressive because there's a bunch of dudes in a small space. It's impressive because there's just a bunch of things that need to be synced up. Yes. So it all seems like one creature as opposed to a bunch of constituent parts. Yes. So even if it's all radio controlled, which it's not, there are some people in there, but even if there's a guy 10 feet away controlling the eyes with a remote, you still need to all make it so it's this one single ensemble. And right?
There's like, there's close-ups of his like reactions and stuff. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What else do I have here? Their escape plan is a little convoluted. Because first it involves sending the droids. And then it involves getting Leia in, pretending to be a bounty hunter with Chewbacca. And then Luke arrives.
Yes. Unrelated, right? They just...
I don't know.
They weren't working together, right?
No, they were. It's all part of this convoluted plan.
Oh.
And then R2-D2 has his lightsaber in him.
Yes.
But how would they have known it will be useful to have R2-D2 separately have my lightsaber? How did he know he was... Like, did they plan to get caught and then plan to be brought to the Sarlacc pit? Like, it's just very convoluted, where it's like all these things had to happen exactly a certain way for this plan to work.
Well, maybe he doesn't have an open carry license, and so he...
If that were even a thing, Jabba wouldn't care. He's a criminal.
No, I know, I'm saying...
It's his business to break the law.
What if he, like, got a pat down, and so he was like, okay, I'm gonna give it to R2 so that they don't find it.
Doesn't anyone
take
give him
it
a pat
away.
down? No, he just chokes the guys out and they...
Well,
no,
I know.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think they were expecting that.
Also, speaking of the lightsaber, the amount of times they say in this movie that a lightsaber is a Jedi's weapon...
Mm-hmm. You did point that out.
Again, it's like things... You have to try to imagine there's no other Star Wars media.
Mm-hmm.
The only evil person we've ever seen use a lightsaber is Darth Vader. But he was a Jedi.
Yes.
So, is the implication that only Jedi use lightsabers and the Sith, which have never... The word has never been spoken in these 3 movies, but that's what they are. I think they were used... I think that word was used in promotional material. Do the Sith not use lightsabers? Because the Emperor doesn't.
He's got lightning fingers.
I know.
So I guess he doesn't need to.
But I'm just saying, it's just the amount of times they say lightsaber, a Jedi's weapon.
You only see a few.
Obi-Wan even says it in the first one. It's the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Like, it almost implies that it's a Jedi thing. And Vader uses one because he was a Jedi. Like, that's just his lightsaber he had.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So, I thought that was interesting. Something I didn't notice until now.
I don't know.
Again, it really doesn't matter because then they retcon it, and of course everyone's using lightsabers and stuff.
I figured it would be like the style, right? So like when Vader has Luke's lightsaber, he's like, oh, it's like homemade or whatever. Like, huh, look at that.
He's like, I see you've constructed a new lightsaber.
Yeah, as opposed to like...
You know Anakin wanted to geek out, but he was like, I have to be evil. I have to be evil.
But, you know, so I thought it was just like a specific thing, like a type of sword, right? So there's like many a sword. And so... But like, only certain people use certain swords or whatever.
Well, because again, the rule there becomes the evil people use red.
Yeah.
And the good guys use blue and green. And then Samuel L. Jackson, when they were making the first prequel, but he doesn't use a lightsaber at all in that movie, but he was talking to George Lucas. And he was like, well, I get to use a lightsaber? And he was like, probably in the next one. And he's like, can mine be purple? And Lucas is like, there's really footage of this happening behind the scenes on Phantom Menace. It's just like a casual conversation.
Oh, really?
And he's like, can mine be purple? And Lucas is like, no, the good guys are blue and green. He's like, yeah, but my favorite color is purple. And Lucas is like, maybe we can make it purple. And sure enough, in the next one, he uses a purple one. And he's the only one that we see use a purple one.
He's kind of mixed. Blue and red.
Well, that was the answer that he gave. Well, I don't want to get into this now.
What?
No, because I'm like trying not to talk about the other movies while we're talking about this one. But that's another thing. Like, again, we'll see
People
this problem. Well, we'll see the problem we're talking about here, where it's like on paper, like there's things that are supposedly quote unquote the point, but you don't get until like you start thinking about it more. And you have to like kind of project onto it. People talk about, oh yeah, that's the thing, because he's like kind of almost like in the middle, like he's kind of a more like morally gray character. But we never get that in the movies because everyone's written like a robot. I never, as a kid, when you watch the prequels, you're supposed to think, oh, the Jedi are kind of like in the wrong. Like they're a very flawed, somewhat morally dubious organization. I never got that as a kid. I never got that impression as a kid because they all just talk. Everyone talks the same in this boring monotone way of speaking. So I had no idea Mace Windu was this morally gray character.
But like, not only that, like in terms of like showing it right with what we were saying with like Vader and his goodness, like not only is there not like character stuff, but also if there was a known morally ambiguous Jedi, Why would he be on the Supreme Council?
It just makes no sense.
Why would he be one of the representatives in the Senate?
Yes. I have one more point. I've gone through all my points. A few of them we've already talked about at the beginning, so I took it off. And then other ones I'm like, this isn't even worth getting into right now. This will open a can of worms. I have one more point I want to make, or a question. And I think this is relevant because I'm wondering it here, and then I really am wondering in the prequels, and maybe auxiliary stuff answers it. What is the Emperor's motivation? Does he... That's stupid. Because there's two sides. There's his political power and his magic power. Mm-hmm. Right? Does he use his political power to further his magical power, or does he use his magical power to further his political power?
I think that one.
So that's really... So in the prequels, is he using his Sith powers to become Emperor, or is he trying to become Emperor so he can exert his evil Sith powers? Like, I'm not sure. Oh. And I'm not unsure in a cool, thematically ambiguous way. I'm unsure as in, I just don't understand the motivations of this character. Like, what does he want?
I guess both.
Like, okay, he's the supreme leader of the universe, and? So what does that give you?
Well,
because again, this also speaks to, I don't understand, what does that give you? What does that gain you? I don't understand in this universe. What would that...
He just wants the power, but the powers make him dangerous. Right?
I don't know. I'm just like... No, not really. It's just like his power. Like, I don't understand.
It's like he just wants to be in control because, I don't know, that's a thing that people want. And then the fact that he has, like, lightning coming out of his fucking fingers, that's what kind of bumps up his campaign in terms of becoming higher up.
That would be really cool.
It's like no one wants to talk to Vader because they might get choked out. So it's like, I don't want to question the Emperor because I might get zapped. You know?
That's interesting. I don't think this or any of the prequels ever dive into this.
Nope.
If he's using his Sith powers in order to become a supreme political leader, if I, someone who's seen all of these movies a million times, am still unsure, that's a problem. That's not a me problem. That's
even in the later ones.
In the prequels, no, he never.
No, not in the prequels. Like in the.
And the sequels, no. The sequels even make him into more of a cartoon, one-dimensional villain. Like, I never understand what his motivations are.
He's just an evil dude.
But and that's what makes it a fairy tale, and that's what makes it underwhelming. That, like, the answer can't just be, oh, well, it's just for kids. Like, it's only just for kids when someone criticizes you for it. But then when people are... That's the thing I get annoyed about with George Lucas. Because then when people criticize the prequels, he'll be like, well, but people don't understand. They're made for children. But then he's putting stuff in it that are clearly...
movies for children.
That's my point, is that if someone was like, wow, it's so thematically interesting, he'll be like, yes, of course, I wanted to speak. But then when something doesn't work, he's like, well, it's not supposed to be that in-depth. But in other areas, you're trying for it to be in-depth. So it's like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, or really you're just trying to defend yourself against criticism by saying, oh, well, you're thinking too much into it. Well, I've always hated that argument.
Guess people don't need a reason, right? I mean, why do all bad people want to be in charge? You know, if the stormtroopers or the Empire,
but power to do
based,
what?
Well, if the Empire,
unlimited power implies you have power to do anything.
Yeah,
but we don't ever get a sense of him doing anything. He just sits around. Like, I never get a sense of how he exercises this power. That's what I'm saying.
Well, he just tells people to do stuff. Like, he tells Vader to do stuff.
So he's just a micromanager? Like, that's it?
But, like, of the whole universe.
I guess so. I'm just saying we never see that. We never really see him telling people to do shit. In a way that really matters.
Well, he's trying to build, Why
do you keep trying to come up with answers? There's no answer. You keep going, well, maybe he is silly.
His Sith staff is a little thin.
His Sith staff. Say that 5 times now. Sith staff.
And so he's trying to build up his team, He doesn't really have a lot of time to be doing bidding. But, why did... If the Empire is based off of, Nazi Germany, why did Hitler want to be in charge? I don't know.
to exercise power and national glory.
Exactly.
No, but
So the same thing.
specific things. He wanted to take over certain regions for the betterment of his country.
Yeah.
We don't have an answer for the Emperor.
Well, the Emperor wants to exert power.
Oh, and what scene told you that? A power to do what?
I don't know. Be the Emperor of everything.
You brought up Hitler. I could list all the things he wanted to do with his power and did with his power.
So he wants to do the same.
Tell me what scene in this movie tells us
Just
this, or any of them.
him being evil and being an emperor.
Let's do some trivia. You're excruciating. It took 6 people, like we said, to work the full-size animatronic of Jabba the Hutt. The puppet fit 3 men inside, 2 to operate the arms, head, and tongue, and another to move the tail. A man lying below the puppet, outside, I think, pulled strings to move Jabba's mouth and make his sides heave, and 2 radio operators controlled the slimy goon's eyes, including pupil dilation, direction, and wideness of eyelids. A final crew member was responsible for rubbing gel on the puppet to give Jabba his slimy look.
What'd you do today at work?
I rubbed slime on a giant slug. Hey, if it puts food on the table for his family. The Emperor's chair was mechanized so that it could rotate when the scene called for it. However, the mechanism never worked properly, so Ian McDiarmid, who plays the Emperor, had to make it move by shuffling his feet. A piece of tape on the floor told him when to stop so it would not be visible to the camera. So he would kind of build up some momentum and then stop so it would look like he's just rotating around. Nyenyub, Lando's co-pilot, who's like a weird monkey guy, speaks a Kenyan dialect called Haya. According to sound designer Ben Burt, the lines were delivered by Kip Singh Rodich, a Kenyan student living in the US, and are actually correct Hayan translations of the English text. Audiences in Kenya were reportedly very thrilled to hear their language spoken in proper context.
Nice.
So it's not just like a bunch of
Yeah.
During the shot in which Salacious Crumb, the small, annoying rat-like thing that sits with Jabba in his palace, during the shot in which Salacious Crumb is chewing off C-3PO's eye, Anthony Daniels had a panic attack while in the C-3PO suit. While filming, he didn't actually say his lines. All of his lines were dubbed in post-production anyway, but repeated, get me up, over and over. This take is the one used in the final cut.
Oh, he didn't know it was happening? What?
What do you mean he didn't know it was happening?
Why did he have a panic attack?
And something just happened. He just got claustrophobic with the suit and the little creature up in his face, and he talking about in interviews. He's just like, something just I just started having a panic attack. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So he just kept going, get me up, like just get me out of take the thing off so he could like breathe and just like.
Yeah. Because he's just a little puppet guy, right?
Yeah, but imagine a little puppet guy pecking it, because the scene is he's pecking his face, pulling out his eyes.
That's true. That's true.
Fake scripts were distributed to some cast members that were considered likely to leak information to the media. Some of these phony story elements were indeed leaked, such as Lando being revealed as the, quote, last hope for the Jedi, mentioned by Obi-Wan and Yoda in the last movie. So that was like a fake story beat, because they basically were like, some people in this we know they're gonna spill the beans, so we're gonna put fake things in it. Admiral Akbar's famous line, "It's a trap," was originally scripted as, "It's a trick." The line was changed in post-production after a negative test screening. It's a trick!
That's so random.
It's so funny because it's an iconic line. It's a trap!
That seems like such a small change. There was a negative test screening?
I guess. It's a trick!
It's a trick!
Because tricks are something like little mischievous woodland nymphs do. A trap is something the Empire would do. Jabba's sail barge was filmed in Yuma, Arizona. The crew had problems avoiding the 35,000 dune buggy enthusiasts in the area. To preserve secrecy, like we talked about, the producers claimed to be making a horror movie called Blue Harvest with the tagline, "Horror Beyond Imagination." And he even had caps and t-shirts made up for the crew saying Blue Harvest. A chain link fence and a 24-hour security service could not prevent diehard fans from entering the set and sneaking some photographs.
Oh, my frick.
John Williams' son, Joseph Williams, the lead singer of the pop rock band Toto, collaborated on part of the score and wrote lyrics for the Ewok songs.
What? I did not know he was his father.
You're going to love this one. The slithery noises made when Jabba the Hutt moves were created by sound designer Ben Burt running his hands through a cheese casserole. So you never know what the Foley is.
When would you ever do that? That's what I'm saying. Foley.
I think you just try a bunch of things.
Foley is just exploration.
See, here's the thing.
Of sounds.
Well, that's the thing. I think someone would think and go like, "How would you ever think to do that?" I don't think he sat down and went, "Oh, you know what? We should do this with cheese." I think he tried 50 things.
No, I know.
And then just randomly tried different things and then went, that's the best one.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like with Foley, it's like you just try a bunch of random shit and say, like, oh,
yeah,
hey, that sounds good. Okay.
According to Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO, it took him less than 10 minutes to put on the C-3PO outfit, unlike the last two movies where it took him 2 hours. Eventually, he kind of gets streamlined at a certain point, after doing it a bunch of times.
Was it, like, different parts? Why did it take 2 hours? Oh, well, remember, the thing broke.
The thing was breaking, yeah. I think it was. No one had ever done it before. By the third one, this is the third go-around, so I think they had kind of streamlined certain things.
Hopefully his foot is okay.
In the Battle of Endor, and by that I think they mean the space battle, many of the ships and other objects far in the background are actually things like chewed-up gum.
What?
Like in the last one, they used a potato. The crew knew there was so much action going on that people would not notice things like this, and used it to fill up the picture in the background.
Scammed.
Ralph McQuarrie, who we talked about, did like the concept art for the first film and was instrumental in kind of establishing what this world would look like, and was instrumental in helping George Lucas sell the idea. Mm-hmm. He became burned out because of the constant work on this movie and his hatred of the Ewok concept and walked away from production. Before filming began, it was discovered that all of Darth Vader's lightsaber props had either been lost or stolen from like the other movies.
What?
Thus, one of Luke Skywalker's stunt saber props from Episode 5 had to be quickly cannibalized into a Vader-esque saber for this movie. Interesting. You would think they would save some of this stuff. At the time, the climactic battle in outer space featured more optical effects in one scene than had ever been previously committed to film. Caroline Blackiston, who plays Mon Mothma, so she's the woman in the white gown.
The singing?
No, in the rebel lady. She's a human.
Oh, yes. Okay.
She had to re-record her dialogue for ADR after it was discovered that her microphone had picked up the sounds of pigeons roosting in the set ceiling. For my younger listeners, roosting means they were fucking!
Oh, okay, you don't have to say it like that.
Admiral Akbar's original backstory is that he was once the slave of Grand Moff Tarkin, the villain from the first movie.
Oh!
As well as his personal pilot. This changed in Star Wars Clone Wars and is now off of the Legends continuity. The inside of Jabba the Hutt's palace is deliberately styled to resemble the Mos Eisley Cantina in Episode 4. George Lucas wanted to redo the scene, but with a bigger budget without having to rely on stock masks. So that kind of supports my theory.
Yeah.
Because again, before it was just like they found a Wolfman mask from a random movie.
Yes. We see you, George.
Yes. According to Star Wars canon, Luke had been to the Sarlacc pit before. During his adolescence, it was a popular dare amongst his friends to jump the Sarlacc pit in a low-flying sand skimmer.
Is that on Tatooine? Oh.
Yeah.
On Tatooine?
Remember he says we're going to Tatooine.
I know, it was just so far away from town, I forgot.
No, he's on the outskirts. The trumpeting sound by the Ewoks at the end of the Battle of Endor was also heard in the Ten Commandments, film from the 50s. The only film in which Han Solo appears where he is never seen in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. Again, because they're like, we don't know what to do with this character.
Oh, he was busy being frozen.
Paul Brook learned from his agent that he got the part of the Rancor Keeper during a stop off in Calcutta whilst touring a play in India for the British Council. His brief role was shot over the 16th and 17th of March of 1982, the first scene being with Mark Hamill. The subsequent scene where he cried at the Rancor's death was filmed against a blue screen on day 2. Paul Brook did not know what the Rancor looked like or had even seen the fish scene until a convention in 2018.
What?
Because the scene where he's crying, you could tell it's a blue screen. So when they filmed it, he didn't know what it was.
But he didn't know for like 40 years?
Yeah, I guess he just never... He was just in this movie for one day. He was like, I don't care. Richard Marquand directed the crew of the Mon Calamari cruiser to break into applause and celebration when the Death Star exploded, but Tim Rose, who played Admiral Akbar, refused, believing that Akbar would feel relief but also regret over the lives lost. Yes. So you notice that in this, he kind of just like sits down into his chair. I've always was like, is he sad? Like what?
No, he's just not glorifying the deaths
of thousands of people. In 2024, Leia's gold bikini sold at a heritage auction for $175,000. Some weird nerd bought this and had a wild sexual evening with it.
What?
Smelling it or something.
Ew.
Shooting the scene of Darth Vader's unmasking was handled with so much secrecy that Sebastian Shaw, who played the unmasked Vader, was not even told what he would be doing until he arrived on the set. He was spotted by his old friend Ian McDermott, who played Emperor Palpatine / Darth Sidious. He asked Shaw what he was doing there, and Shaw answered, I don't know, they haven't told me anything about it except that it has something to do with science fiction, end quote. Yoda is the only Jedi that dies on screen of natural causes. I think any of them. Now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Everyone else dies from wounds or getting their head chopped off or something. The scene showing the Empire firing the new Death Star... I noticed them when we were watching, but I wasn't sure. The scene showing the Empire firing the new Death Star super laser for the first time and the Empire personnel escaping before Darth Vader is unmasked by Luke Skywalker are recycled scenes from the first movie, but the scenes are mirrored. So, like, when they're in the control room, like, clicking all the buttons, I noticed it's the same thing, they just mirrored it. They just reversed it. They just, like, flipped the image, basically. Because they were like, why refilm something like that? We already filmed it.
Okay.
Talk about a retread. They're literally using footage! From an engineering perspective, both Death Stars were poorly constructed because they did not have either safety or redundancy systems. When Wedge Antilles and Lando Calrissian shot out the power regulator, the entire reactor exploded. A properly engineered power generator would have had multiple backups and safety protocols to prevent such an occurrence.
I did think this. Both times.
Again, I like it because it's kind of like the Empire's hubris.
But you know what? Yeah.
Until we watch Rogue One, where we find it was intentional. But that's a story for another time.
Oh, was it?
Well, in the new canon, maybe.
Well, I mean, obviously it was intentional, but
No, but intentional as in, like, someone was trying to sabatage it.
Oh.
But we'll see.
Well, yeah, the Jedi.
The person who designed it.
Oh.
No. Why do you try to fill in the blank? You have no idea. You're like, oh, yes, of course. But why are you trying to fill in the blank? Why are you so weird? Do you want to hear some critical reception?
Yes.
This reception is critical.
I don't know why you're asking. Just say it. I'm so hot right now.
I am hot. At the time, so in terms of the contemporary reaction, Rotten Tomatoes has an 83%, so a bit of a downgrade from the last one.
Oh.
Though it's still pretty decent score, all things considered, and the consensus is, quote, though failing to reach the cinematic heights of its predecessors, Return of the Jedi remains an entertaining sci-fi adventure and a fitting end to the classic trilogy, end quote. Film critic Roger Ebert gave the film 4 out of 4 stars, calling it, quote, a complete entertainment, a feast for the eyes, and a delight for the fancy. It's a little amazing how Lucas and his associates keep topping themselves, end quote. So Roger Ebert clearly liked it. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune also gave the film 4 stars out of 4 and wrote, quote, from the moment that the familiar Star Wars introductory words begin to crawl up the screen, Return of the Jedi is a childlike delight. It's the best video game around. And for the professional moviegoers, it is particularly enjoyable to watch every facet of filmmaking at its best, end quote. I just disagree with both of you. But Roger Ebert also gave The Phantom Menace like 3.5 out of 4 stars famously, and also said video games are an art. So I take whatever Roger Ebert says with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
James Harwood of Variety called the film, quote, a visual treat throughout, end quote, but thought that, quote, Hamill's not enough of a dramatic actor to carry the plot load here, end quote. Which I somewhat disagree. I feel like he's doing the best he can with the material.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford is, quote, present more in body than in spirit this time, given little to do but react to special effects, and it can't be said that either Carrie Fisher or Billy D. Williams rise to previous efforts. But Lucas and director Richard Marquand have overwhelmed these performer flaws with a truly amazing array of creatures, old and new, plus the familiar space hardware, end quote.
Yeah, I feel like it was more of a show-off movie than it was, like, having people do things.
Like a movie.
So...
Like a satisfying story, yeah.
Yeah, so they just put a lot more into, like, you know, Jabba and the club and all that stuff. Like, I feel like that is kind of what was paid attention to, as opposed to, like, some, like, deep narrative. Like you were saying, it's kind of thin, right? So it's like... Yeah.
Which is weird, because the last one did so well. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe they stumbled into of interesting thematic story.
Oh.
Vincent Canby of the New York Times called Return of the Jedi, quote, by far the dimmest adventure of the lot, end quote, and stated, quote, the joys of watching space battles as envisioned by wizards in studios and laboratories are not inexhaustible, end quote. So his kind of sentiment seems to be kind of like, you know, it's great up to a certain point, but this is like the third movie of this. Like,
Yeah.
Like, it's the same old stuff, and we're downgrading it on a story level. So, like
oh, sorry, we're just a little busy inventing things. Sorry, it's not up to your to your expectations.
Yeah, but there's plenty of movies
Vincent.
there are plenty of movies that are technologically innovative and also amazing films in their own right. Case in point,
3 in a row. Basically nonstop.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings. 1, 2, 3.
They filmed it all at the same time. These were different productions.
Yes, I know. Pauline Kael of the New Yorker stated, quote, "Some of the trick effects might seem miraculous if the imagery had any luster, but Return of the Jedi is an impersonal and rather junky piece of movie making," end quote. I usually disagree with Pauline Kael. She's usually a Debbie Downer. Mm-hmm. She doesn't like American Graffiti. And like a lot of other movies.
It's kind of like boring.
You're going to get flicked.
I guess if you...
Well, she didn't like it because she found it very conservative. Like, it's like looking back at a period before, like, the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement. Like, it's basically just like white, like, it's just about white guys. Yeah, which is a fair critique. All of our criticisms are valid.
Just about some kids hanging out.
Anyway, but I'm happy when Pauline and I don't like the same movie. Because then she really is able to articulate. She's like one of like the iconic movie critics. Mm-hmm. Like if you were to rank like the top, like the Michael Jordan of movie critics, it's probably Roger Ebert just because he was so ubiquitous. Mm-hmm. But Pauline Kael is up there in terms of just like being so well respected. Mm-hmm. Christopher John, 2 first names. Christopher John reviewed the Return of the Jedi in Aries magazine number 15 and commented that, quote, "Star Wars may not be dead, but Return of the Jedi is a failure and is a cheap and tarnished crown for the series which shook the world of film when it started out a long time ago in that galaxy far, far away," end quote. So again, it seems to be, while overwhelming 83% positive, it seems like there was a bit of a split kind of feeling.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just the wrap up, really. I mean, I know it's all of it, but I think if you were to say, like, you know, this is how everything is wrapping up. That's it. Okay.
It just kind of feels like it's like so many parts of it are like, of course they're gonna do that. Of course, like it doesn't feel like a story that's organically kind of growing out of itself, and more just kind of like checking a bunch of boxes. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm clearly in the minority because my reception on Letterboxd has a 4.05. It is very well loved by modern, I guess, the Letterboxd community, if that's a good sample size. Here are some funny reviews I found. Sierra writes, quote, the musical artist Sierra, writes, "The saddest moment in cinematic history is when those 2 Ewoks get caught in an explosion and one of them gets up and shakes the other, but it doesn't move. I literally am still in fucking tears. George Lucas, you utter piece of shit."
That part was really...
It's so random and jarring. It's like this
so
really
sad.
like... Also, we didn't talk about how George Lucas envisioned the Ewoks like the Viet Cong, like an insurgent force fighting a much more powerful, technologically powerful empire.
What?
I'm like, I guess so. Anyway, Robert writes, quote, "God, I can't wait to steal Yoda's move and just say, quote, 'It's my time,' and then straight up disappear to become a ghost when someone asks me an uncomfortable question." Because Luke's like, "Is Vader my father?" He's like, "Rest. I need rest." Luke's like, "Yoda, I know you. And Vitamin C writes, "Ewoks are literally just ancient minions. Because they're both merchandise of, like, they're both like,
Kind of.
right?
They're just cute little guys.
Let's talk quickly about the legacy. So after we watched this, we watched all the special edition changes. Yes. And that implies, but I'm also talking about all the changes because there was changes for 1997 and then 2004 and then 2011, and they keep making changes. So we already talked about this in the other ones. So I won't belabor this too much. But in terms of this movie's changes, the changes include inserting several alien band members and a different song in Jabba's throne room, which includes CG. It's a much better song, but it's weirder because it feels like it doesn't fit into Star Wars. Mm-hmm. She's like, it's almost like a, you know.
I thought this one was fun.
It almost reminds me of To Be Real. It kind of reminds me of that. And then the new version, it's like To Be Real, and then you have the CGI guy going, and we see his like uvula shake.
Okay, that was a little silly.
Whereas the original one, she's like,
yeah.
It kind of fit with Star Wars a little bit more.
I thought this one was fine. I don't know why they would change it.
So a different song. They modified the Sarlacc to include a beak, which is so stupid because we already see the teeth. Remember, it was like a little, they gave it a head.
Oh yes.
They replaced the music at the end of the closing scene, which I actually like. I like the Yub Nub's hilarious. Yub Nub. But I think Yub Nub adds to the feeling you feel, where it's kind of like, wait, so this is the ending? Like, whereas the changed music feels like the end of a saga's music. Like, it feels like a
Oh, does it? It's like more... I don't remember from the video.
It just feels more emotional. Well, let's do it when we're done. It just feels more like it could end a franchise. Mm-hmm. It's not bombastic. It just like has like a certain like emotional catharsis to it. It's hard to explain.
You don't feel any emotions
with Yub Nub? No. I laugh.
Yub Nub.
Because it's like this weird diegetic song. You know? And it's weird because Star Wars is famous for having these like sweeping orchestral things. So we're going to end what was at the time the end of the series.
The end of it all with Yub
with a weird diegetic like kind of like almost like these like ancient tribal instruments and then also the special editions included a montage of different alien worlds celebrating the fall of the Empire, which I also quite like.
I do remember.
Ultimately, I feel like the original versions should still be accessible and exist, but I wouldn't mind like if you. I think that plays. I don't mind that those changes, the music change and having the montage because it gives it a sense of finality.
I think,
especially if you watch all 6 of the movies.
Oh yes.
And then you just watch the special editions. It does help make it feel like one piece because we see Naboo, we see Coruscant. Those are prequel locations.
Because
even though the prequels hadn't come out yet when they did that.
Yeah. Well, I think you know what it does add to. It kind of answers the questions that you have, right? Is the Empire still there? Like, what's going on?
In the old canon, it's like, oh no, the Empire's done.
Like, everyone knows. Yeah, it's not just like this one isolated event. I don't know how they know, but whatever. Yeah. But then it's like, oh, okay, we're done with the Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as opposed to, like, after the first one, you're like, okay, well, Darth Vader got away, but, like, is he the entirety of the Empire? Or, like, what's going on?
There's a lot of questions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I already talked about this, but I'll talk about this in more detail in terms of the legacy, right? While the Sarlacc battle sequence, the speeder bike chase, the space battle, and Luke's duel against Vader are all well regarded, the battle between the Ewoks and the Stormtroopers remains controversial. Fans are divided on the likelihood of the Ewok being a primitive race of small creatures defeating an armed ground force comprising of the Empire's quote-unquote best troops, which is what the Emperor says. He's like, a legion of my best troops. Lucas has defended this scenario, saying that the Ewoks' purpose was to distract the Imperial troops, and they did not really win. His inspiration for the Ewoks' victory came from the Vietnam War, where the Viet Cong prevailed against the technologically superior United States. But notably, the Viet Cong never won like a traditional battle against the United States. It was always like when they like did like surprise attacks.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like
That's
army on army. Yeah, I guess, but like
because they weren't expecting them, right? He comes over and then they all pop up and they're like, ah!
I don't know.
They start throwing rocks and stickers at them.
All right, Viviana, favorite part.
Oh frick.
Oh.
I think maybe just like all the creatures.
All the creatures.
I think it takes a lot of creativity to do that. If you were to ask me like, hey, make a bunch of alien species, I'm like, right? I don't know. So I don't know. I think they're cool. And I also like Endor with the chase scene and stuff.
Of course. You know, you love to just list a bunch of things. As if I said favorite parts.
I just said one, and then...
the first one was a bunch. You said all the creatures.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of creatures.
Yes.
That's which creature?
What do you... Why does it have to be one creature?
It doesn't. Okay, those are your favorite parts. Let's move on. Okay. So because the longer I just let you keep going, you're gonna just keep saying stuff. This isn't
You look disappointed in my first answer, so I
didn't have any reaction. I feel nothing one way or the other.
I wanted to elaborate on some other things.
I feel nothing one way or the other about your choices. My favorite part,
Yep, no.
No! My favorite part is the special edition song.
What?
Yeah! Like, I unironically like that song, even though I don't know what she's saying, 'cause she's speaking like in an alien language. It's still...
With her little snout.
Her little snout.
And her little lips. But then she has like a Mike Wazowski body.
Yeah, it's just weird. Okay, Viviana. 1 to 10. What are you giving Return of the Jedi?
I think I'm going to give this an 8. And
You're fucking weird.
and then that means it goes on top of all the other.
That is preposterous.
Yup.
Any thoughts about this? So how is this better than the other two, I guess? And that's not rhetorical. Like, so
I don't know. This one felt like maybe it's because it is like a sequel that
they have all their
helps
shit
it.
together. Like,
But it's like I'm familiar, with things, and then fun stuff is happening. Like there's hijinks, and then there's also like the action and stuff, and it's like they're kind of cohesive as a team, and like I don't know.
Interesting.
I just kind of liked it. I just feel like
There is a delight in like the payoff of like we've already established these characters and their relationships, so like, just seeing them do stuff is.
yeah. I mean, even if we think the dialogue is weird at times, I think like the dynamics are like a little better. Whereas like in the first two, there was really like this back and forth of like how did these characters interact with each other, especially with Han and Leia. And, like, I don't know. It was just kind of awkward. It's just kind of awkward. And, they were just saying weird stuff to each other. So now it's like, I don't know. More of a team.
Yeah.
And we got the little guys, They're kind.
They're kind. They went out of their way to help.
He did. He was so
Throw their
scared.
rocks.
He was so scared of her.
And he was so weird looking. No eyelids. I wish they changed that. I wish they added eyelids.
I guess they just had self-moisturizing eyeballs. It's not really.
Okay. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10.
What?
It's a net positive, but just barely, and it just bothers me and annoys me because it's not mediocre, and it's not bad. It's okay. It's just a massive underwhelm, especially off of where we ended the last one.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's like
is your top. That's number.
which is my
Give it a 9.
Exactly. So I'm gonna give this a 6. So this automatically puts it below the original Star Wars, but above. Huh?
I said the bottom of all three.
The bottom of all three, easily.
Of course, on top of the holiday
Above
special.
the holiday special, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, this was interesting. This is one of those movies where it's like, again, for me a 6 is like I'll watch it, but I'll never go out of my way to watch it just to watch it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's only because like we're watching it for this. Like.
Well, you know what I think is also interesting is that looking at these scores, it you know how it's like a kind of return to form, and they kind of like tried something new and then pulled back. It seems like it worked with you, and not so much with me.
The trying something new. Yeah, exactly.
I guess so, yeah. Because Empire Strikes Back is my third, and you're first.
Yeah.
So, I just thought that was...
So we both agree the original Star Wars is the second best film of the trilogy.
Yeah.
We can both agree on that. Well, I'm sweating up a storm here. I think it's time to wrap this up. That's it for this week's episode. Now, that's why I call a franchise. Next, we'll be watching the next film in the franchise, the 1990 film, Star Wars Episode 1. Oh, wait, just kidding! The 1984 film, The Ewok Adventure. Viviana, where can they find us?
I feel like Bantha stew. It's so warm. You guys can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe on Kashyyyk, I don't know. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Franchise Podcast.
And if you have the time, leave a rating for us on Apple Podcasts, because apparently that helps.
And if you have even more time, go to Alderaan. Just kidding. Leave us a review, too.
These aren't even funny.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying
right?
words that I know.
Oh my gosh.
Just
Well, here's some words.
planets.
Here's some words I know. We know you have many podcasting options, and we thank you for choosing us. Peace out, guys.
Later, Gators.